Planning Board is now in session. Before we get to the first item on the agenda, this is our first televised Planning Board meeting since the passing of Kevin Giblin. I think it's appropriate that we acknowledge his long relationship with this board. For over 30 years, Kevin Giblin appeared in this room at countless Planning Board meetings, presenting a wide range of projects. From residential subdivisions and commercial site plans to single-family homes or simple lot line revisions, his proposals were consistently at the top of the engineering practice and were presented in a highly professional manner. He was extremely generous. He donated time and resources to the town that touched many neighborhoods. On a personal note, I have known Gib since high school. And it always made me happy to see him reach such tremendous success while having a good time doing it. We may all know someone who makes you feel good when you see him or her. I think Kevin Giblin was that kind of person. He will be missed. Before we go on to the first item on the agenda, it's appropriate also that the Planning Board wish Jesse Stein a happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
First item on the agenda is a public hearing. Major site plan, Kane's Crossing, 141 Southville Road, and also the lower impact development, Kane's Crossing, 141 Southville Road. I'll ask the town planner to give us an update on where we are with this project. Karina.
Okay. This public hearing for Kane's Crossing at 141 Southville Ave continued from March 20th to April 3rd to this evening. The applicant submitted updated and supplemental information based on comments received from Fuss and O'Neill and from planning board members and town departments, to which they responded, like I said, and provided supplemental information. That information was sent to Fuss and O'Neill, and we received comments back this afternoon, which have been forwarded to the applicant. And I'd like to say that I believe that all, if not most, of the comments have been addressed at this point. There was one lingering issue about the homeowner's language that we were going to discuss a little bit more this evening. So again, this is for major site plan review and lower impact development.
Good evening, gentlemen. Mr. Bemis. Peter, could you introduce yourself and the family?
Very good, I will. Peter Bemis, Engineering Design Consultants, here with Bartolini Builders, project owner and applicant. Kane's Crossing at Lincoln Square. We've gone through a full revision since we had last met with you about a month ago. The revision on all the plans is April 4th, 2017. To highlight the changes, we've got units that are now numbered 1 through 11, and this will be the actual unit numbers as designated for their street address, and we have designated the circle Kane's Circle. Both those items were cleared through the assessor's office and through the fire department. The other item that we did was we put a list of all the permits issued. To date, we have a pending permit coming from the Board of Health, so we've left that blank. And then we'll have 2 pending permits with this board that we hope that we'll be discussing with you this evening for lower impact development and for site plan review. We've also got our plan list here with the one-of-one for the stormwater management plan and for the one-of-one for the landscape plan. Those have carried forward as well. On existing conditions, really no change since the last time you saw it. We had all of our test pits, the trees that had been located along Southville Road and Parkerville Road were presented to you at the last meeting, so that's just a carry forward. Again, on our layout materials plan, we've got our unit numbers being designated. We've identified where we're going to be putting some benches along our gravel pave limits for our parking area. I'll show you another detail on that when you get to the landscaping plan. We've got our light bases also identified here at the limits of that gravel pave area, the lighting fixture located on the right. On our grading and drainage plan, again, those unit numbers would repeat. We've got all of our utilities located on here with our drains, sewers, the leaching systems, all identified in our final configuration. The detail sheet, the only thing that would have been on here that you might have seen the last time, for those of you who are here and not here, was the gravel pave detail. So that's located in the lower left of that sheet. And for the stormwater management plan, again, no major revisions from the last time you had seen this. On our landscaping plan, there were a number of changes. There was discussion about having native and indigenous plant material. For the most part, we kept the plants that we felt strongly about, that we think help identify and create a nice environment here for our proposed development, but we did introduce a number of native and indigenous species to complement those. We also identified a number of trees that would be affected by our proposal, so we have those listed on the sheet. We have a number of notes. We did add 2 additional notes from the last time we had met that were brought up by Ms. Luttrell. And we also identified one that we had done from her previous comments pertaining to substitutions, that only substitutions will be done through the planning board. And the irrigation layout was not on the plan the last time you had seen this, so that layout's shown on the plans as well, with a irrigation control location on the plan. And those are the plans that got distributed through your, for peer review. The only thing that you didn't get was that landscaping, because my landscaper is not CAD oriented, and he sent me the previous plan. And we put all of the irrigation information into the plan that you folks got, which wasn't the latest plan, so you still had the plan that had the spirea on it and those other plants that we substituted. So I have to say I'm sorry about that, but that's what happens when someone who has no CAD knowledge sends you a CAD drawing. And we went ahead and put it in there. So we caught it, we made the corrections today, and you have that final plan. The other point that I'd raise is that on those benches that I mentioned you on the layout plan, you'll see that there was proposed raised gardens, rock gardens, that would go on either side of those benches. And that was added to enhance the control over the leaching area so that we don't have any potential vehicles entering that area. And that's something we did in conjunction with this group bringing that up and then working with the Board of Health. So the Board of Health actually sent an email relative to that to Karina. So we have that for record as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Open it up to the board. Mr. Mills.
Thank you. So I'm just curious, I know one of the items was the language on the restricting the open space use. Do we know when we'll have that?
You should have that. We drafted that, and then we had some comments through Karina, and we addressed those today, and I did send those back to her corrected. And
No, they're not in the packet. We got some language later in the morning today, and then Jack came in and let me know. We discussed it a little bit, and then Peter emailed us a couple of changes to that, and this is the package that we're passing down. It's basically a paragraph on the last page, second to last page.
It's not that lengthy that we could read it into the record if you'd like, however you'd like to do it.
I think,
Do you have
Andy,
one
you
for
have
each member?
several copies. Andy,
Okay,
you're
all
gonna
right, I want to
pass
make
them
sure. That
down.
was Jack's responsibility to bring those
Yeah.
this evening.
They're here. I had them.
I'm making sure he did.
Did you pass one to Elizabeth?
I have 5. There's one extra. There's one for me.
Okay.
So, and, can you explain to me again on the landscape design, what happened with that? So is this the final plan, or are we getting another one?
Yes, this is the final plan.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
So it went to Fuss and O'Neill, it went to Karina, we did a full distribution on it. So this is of record. The only thing that you do not have in front of you, and I'd be happy to leave this version of it, was the one that just had the 2 notes that Mimi had raised regarding the trees along Southville Road being maintained and preserved, and the other was the berm at the corner here being maintained.
That's all I have for now. I want to read the paragraph.
Mr. Jenks?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm not finding the detail on the gravel.
Okay.
What,
It was on sheet 4,
sheet 4?
lower left. Oh, excuse me, sheet 5, lower left.
No. I'm talking about the, do you have an area where it's dimensioned?
Sure, yep. That's on layout materials plan, so that'd be sheet 2. Sheet 3, how's that? Sheet 2 is the existing conditions plan. So you see over the center circle area, we elected to use the gravel pave so that we could keep a permeable surface there to minimize the pavement.
Okay,
But those are a unitized product. They do hold their structure very well, be able to
come in
maintain it.
blocks.
Yes, it's a grid. Yep,
Yep.
you fill the grid in.
And you talked about the possibility of some boulders or something there to keep people from going past the gravel onto the,
Right, that's on the landscaping plan, and what we're doing is we're proposing rock gardens. So rather than just have a boulder there,
okay?
we're going to have rocks with perennials and annuals. So if we go back to that sheet again,
Got it.
so there'll be clusters to the left and right of the benches.
Do we have a readable set of these, full size?
Yeah, Karina does, and we've issued a PDF, so we can print as many as you'd like at full size.
Could I get a copy of the PDF?
Yes, sure.
That would-
I think you posted at the website, didn't you not?
Is it on the website?
It's on the website, and
Fan-
I think you have an email, but we also keep the full size in our office for
Okay,
easy. And if you want, I
fantastic.
could get you one to look at.
My old eyes have a problem with a lot of this. I know you said, I'm gonna come back to locating this on the ground. And I know you said you were gonna put granite corner posts on the site. And you've got those located on which,
3 of 5. So we put it at the east corner, Parkerville, the southeast, and then the southwest at Southville. Those 3 locations, and then there's a marker, designate granite boundary marker to be set, because there are definitely no markers there today. The plan of land, as you had seen before, only had an iron pin tying it down.
I guess what I'm wondering about is something that ties at least one of these to something existing on the property. So it's not a freestanding structure that on paper could float anywhere?
Oh, no, it's tied into the Southville Road County layout. I mean, this is,
Where is that tied into the layout?
well, by survey, do you see, if you look to the south, just beyond the Dean Road, there's a CBDH up 8 inches. That's a Worcester County highway bound that we found.
Yeah,
So, our survey work because there was only one iron pin tying this down, we surveyed Southville Road. We went back probably around 2,000 feet down Southville Road
okay,
and
but
tied in.
if I'm looking at the right thing and it says granite boundary marker to be set, is that?
Those are the 3 that I just identified to you. Those are going to be set.
I'm sorry, and I'm not following where you're telling me to look.
If you allow me to approach, I'll come back and show it
Please.
on my
Yeah,
plan.
please.
See Dean Road right there? That's the
Okay.
Worcester County highway bound
Okay,
that's of record.
so,
Okay, so that's right here for the other members. And then to tie in, we went down Southville Road towards the railroad to grab 2 other monuments that are much further down the street. So we're tied in to the Southville Road layout as part of our survey for this project.
okay, let me, I understand you've now got Southfield Road laid out. How do you tie something in your project to that marker or to a known marker on Southfield Road?
I am tied into the layout of that property. When I put these points in, I will have tied into the intersection of Parkerville Road, which is a public variable width layout, but of record, and Southville Road, which is a county highway layout.
And you're gonna show that on a plan somewhere?
Well, I would think that it would be in the group's best interest to develop a new plan of land when we go to record for the condominium project, to establish that, versus using the Bruce Salick plan
Okay.
that is of record today.
Okay,
But I follow what you're saying now, is where's that tied down to tell someone else this is how you did it?
exactly.
It doesn't exist yet.
Okay, but
Because this isn't a
something
plan
you're
of
going
land.
to do.
I would say that would be, we'd strongly urge them to do that. Do they have to do it by the code? And, can a lawyer draft a deed without it? They could. But I'd highly urge them to do it, because then all the documents would be tied together. The condo documents with the buildings located on them would all be tied down. So sure.
That is why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that's why I mentioned to the group, this is why we should put those bounds in. You should have, 3 permanent monuments on the road.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No further questions right now.
Thank you. Mr. Stein?
Mr. Bemis, where are we with the disposition of the existing trees on Southville?
Okay, go back to that. We have them on our existing conditions plan, we surveyed them in, and there's a list of them. So do you want to start with that one? So we located all these trees, and they're fairly dense through that stretch, and then we have a number coding them, and we identify what type of tree it is and its size. So that's the existing. And then we identified which trees would be affected because of our proposed driveway coming in or our proposed drainage system, and a number of these trees are actually on our site, okay? They're outside of the layout. The only layout trees were just where the road was coming in that are affected, none by drainage. On the landscaping plan, you can see where we've kept those trees, and then we have supplemental plantings along Southville Road and then along Parkerville Road in this area here. We have a note to the effect that all those trees are to be preserved, long as they're not diseased or dead, and the Southborough tree warden will make that determination during our construction process. Then those trees are also to be preserved, so we've identified that on here with a line item. And then our plantings that we're going to do here, in the event that we have to make some change because that plant material is not available or inappropriate for some other reason when we determine in construction, we would have to come back to staff, and then staff would obviously refer it to the board, and you could then make that decision as to whether we're going to make a substitution or wait. But all three of those items are identified on this landscaping plan as the final plan.
So really, in effect, we're not losing any of the trees on Southville.
We don't want to lose any of them. There may be some that need to come down because, again, diseased or they're dead. I mean, we located them in the winter season.
And then there's a berm at the corner of Parkerville and Southville.
Yeah, it's really not a berm per se. The grade goes up. So if you went out there, the driveway cut, let me see if I can show it in the existing conditions better. So do you see how the land gets raised up through here? You can see the contours are tight. So it goes up about 4.5 feet off of Southville, off of Parkerville and Southville, right at this corner. So we are maintaining that. We're not gonna go in and touch that. In the back here, I'm gonna touch it, but right here at the layout, I'm not gonna touch that.
Can we put that in the order of conditions as far as?
Yeah, well, we identified it on the plan.
Yeah.
It's
great.
on the plan.
Great. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
A couple questions I have. I don't remember, well, tell us and the public why this is called Kane's Crossing. Where did that come from?
I know he was a police officer. You wanna do this, Jack?
We bought this property from the Canes, Mr. Frank Kane Sr. is who we bought it from. Frank Kane Jr. Actually went to school with my brother, and he passed away, maybe it's been 15 years now, but he was I believe he was a sergeant on the police force, and so we named the property after Frank Kane, so it's Kane's Crossing, who was a longtime family in the town of Southborough, and a dedicated servant to the town of Southborough, and passed away as an active policeman at a very young age. Since we bought the property, Frank Kane Sr. has passed away also.
Very good.
There's also Lincoln Square. Lincoln Square was the other aspect of that, and that's what this square had been called historically.
No, I wanted to capture for the record the Kane name. So could you put that, essentially what you said, Jack, in a narrative so that it'll be in the record, future generations will know the significance of the name Kane relative to the land and the family? And then you're calling it Kane's Circle. And I'm trying to think, you got C-A-I-N apostrophe S, as if it was a possessive. And I'm trying to think of other streets in town that have the apostrophe S. And I can't think of any. I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to call it Kane Circle. Kane's Crossing, as far as the name of the subdivision, I think is fine, but from the police and the address and
That's a good idea.
the apostrophe S, I know in later business, I don't think it's tonight, but we have, it's kind of rare, but we have an approved subdivision plan that has the name of the street as one name, and it's being proposed to change the name. And that name is being changed to Gaffney. And it's not Gaffney's Lane, it's Gaffney Lane. So in this case, I think it would be Kane Circle.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I wasn't really thinking about it that way, and now that you mentioned it, I'm surprised when Chief and I talked about it, we didn't both pick up on it, because we didn't, honestly.
Okay, so the plan will,
Just dropped apostrophe and left the S, but I'll take it out. It's not their name. I'd rather have it named after the gentleman.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's consistent with all the other,
Correct.
street names.
Yep.
So thanks for doing that. On sheet 1 of 5, and also on sheet 3, and 2, we have the, we show the wetland and the cart path over there on the western side, southwestern side. It shows the stream, and then we've got those dotted lines that show the 20-foot buffer, the 50-foot buffer, and the 100-foot buffer, which is fine. But I think it's appropriate that those buffers be identified on the other side of the stream as well. Those buffers identified on the plan that would go over into the field.
Okay.
So if you could put those on there, I think that'll make the plan more complete, and it may also help in the future for other things that you're thinking about allowing on that piece of land.
Sorry, just to piggyback on what Mr. Morris was saying, the reference in the wording for the meadow reference, a wall, the intersection of the walls, is that right?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I thought I saw, oh, I know where it was on the first page. Beginning at the point northwesterly corner of the property is on the first page, shown on the plan at the intersection of the stone walls.
Oh, for the boundary description.
Yeah, is that for the meadow?
What they did is we made, there's two descriptions. One is parcel A, which is to be left in its natural state. That was done through the Conservation Commission.
I think you need
Parcel
a mic.
B.
You need a mic.
I believe you're talking about parcel B. Parcel A is through the Conservation Commission, and it's to be left in its natural state. Parcel B is based on those bounds that are going in. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I guess I was confused. So on the first page, right, the last paragraph, it says beginning at the point northwesterly corner of the property shown on said plan at the intersection of the walls of the land
Stone
formerly
wall.
known. Is that referring to the meadow?
Yeah, so
where my
the
question
description
is-
it starts here. So this is the northwest corner of the property. So the northwest corner of the description in parcel A would be the preservation zone that we gave to the Conservation Commission. There's no activities that are allowed in that zone. That zone is gonna be allowed to go into its natural state.
Okay, so that's the wall on the plan at the
Yes,
very top.
that's right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to.
And then
figure
the
out.
next description would pick up from there and come back and describe the rest of it, where we could actually have an activity. If it requires approval, we have to come get it.
I was just wanting to make sure I knew where that wall was, and it's on the plan, so he was,
Yep, it's
Talking
definitely on
about
the plan.
wetlands,
It's
it's
that
already
wall
there.
right there.
thank you.
Very much welcome, thank you. So, just talking with, when I came in this afternoon, Karina and I went over the Stonebrook Village 15-page, and I think she gave you a copy of that, Jack?
I thought
You
it was a
gotta
mistake
grab
that
the
was sent.
microphone.
I actually thought it was sent to me by mistake, so I have it in the car, but I didn't bring it up here tonight.
Okay, no, we're trying to be consistent with I mean, it's been a while, you know, with the economy over the years, it's been a while since we've done subdivisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to, you know, we have a new town planner, we have new town town planning department business manager, and probably, since we've done subdivisions, some new planning board members. So we want to make sure that we take advantage of the good work that was done before and be consistent with this. So she and I went over, I guess it was the 15 pages. And some of the stuff could apply, some of it doesn't. And then there's other things here, like that last paragraph I think you gave her this morning, that had the horseshoes and the
Right.
bocce, that still needs to be worked in. So I want to make clear that, you know, it's going to be the condominium association rules.
What happens, it's a good question. And it came up, I think Mimi brought up, could you put a swimming pool out there and all that stuff? And so we went back and we started thinking, what could go out there? We're not gonna put anything out there. So an association, which is gonna set up, would have to have a 2/3 vote, and they would have to put something out there, if they so desired. And we limited it to activities like a bocce court, a horseshoe pit, putting green, or walking trails, or passive recreation of that nature, picnics or whatever. If you remember, I said I thought I would go out there and have a picnic with my grandchildren, but I think, Phil, you decided maybe we should have a tennis court out there. The fact is, this is a small association. I kind of have the feeling nobody's going to ever do anything with it, but I'm not sure. So we tried to get something that would mimic, and then in the end of it, it also says that, you know, it would have to be approved by the planning board or the Southborough Conservation. So I think we tied it down pretty well.
Right, but I think the way it was left with her today was it still needs a little bit more work. You had that thing about the gazebo, so, and then.
That was brought up last time. So
right, and then there's the walking trails. We do have other connections or appendices to other subdivisions around town, and the ones that come to mind, the pathways or the trails are not paved. They're stone dust or.
Well, that's what I would anticipate here. We didn't put on.
Right, but unless you say it, who knows? They may, the new people may come in and want to pave it. The gazebo could turn into a greenhouse. The putting green could turn into a basketball court, which is all fine. You know, it's their property, it's their condo. But I agree with you that you're going to make a list of things or types of things that would be okay and you just can do it. And then beyond that, you'd have to come back, which is the language that you've got in there. So I just want to make sure that that gets.
Well, you started paving something, you trigger other things in this.
Right.
You can't, I mean, Minnie said a swimming pool, you need a permit for a swimming pool, you need a permit for a tennis court.
Yeah, Mike, check.
I'm sorry, it triggers different things. It would trigger permit process for different things. I just don't believe that the condominium association wants to go into that type of thing. I mean, it's mowed now, so that's probably the way it's going to stay, but I can't guarantee that. I didn't want to limit the association to something that they might foresee.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement.
It's just a nice place for a picnic or something like that.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. It's just how to.
You guys got carried away with the items.
How to capture it in writing so that it's little, you know, there's less confusion in the future. I asked Karina to make a list of the homework assignments here and what we would expect when you come back, because I think when you come back, we're meeting again on the 15th, May 15th, and if we get all this tied up, we should be able to make the final vote at that time. So before I go on to the homework assignment here, I'll open it up to the public to see if anybody has any questions or comments relative to the, what's been proposed. Why don't you grab a mic? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Gary Bertone. I live at 3 Valade Court. This whole development is actually predicated on having 11 units available for the over 55. And I think back in 2015, the other town planner had gone through and looked and determined that there were 197 units that had been previously built. So my question is, has anyone on the planning board actually tried to independently verify the 197 number?
Yes, we did. That was asked, I think, in the very first hearing.
I know it was asked, but my problem is I'm starting to find on the planning board website contradictory information. So,
If it's contradictory, it's because I haven't updated yet.
all right,
But
so
it is checked, and there is a
Okay.
link on the website where it is accurate, and it was confirmed with the assessor.
my question was it independently confirmed by anyone here on the planning board?
Two town planners ago, Jennifer Burney, this would be like in the fall of 2015, these questions came up, and she and I sat down. She went over all the numbers with me. They were cross-checked with the assessor's office.
So the
There was,
housing,
there were questions, there was a citizen, I believe there was a member on the advisory committee that questioned the way that the counts were made because of the multifamily, how you count the multifamilies.
right, so that had to do with the number of units that could be built. My question is not how many was available to be built, but actually how many has already been built. So it's the 197 number, not the 208 that I'm
I can just
asking.
tell you that I sat with the town planner more than once
Okay,
in that time frame and went over those numbers because it was a source of, I guess, frustration that those numbers were being questioned, and how could they be questioned? You know, it's, how hard is it to count these units? But there was I thought, an unnecessary other interpretation of how to count them. And it was agreed through the town planner. I believe at the time the planning board looked at the numbers when they were presented, and with the assessor, and it was all in agreement.
okay, so I have a document that's printed off of the planning board. It's this housing production plan, and I've taken out just one page of that, and it lists the number of units that were built for the various over 55 units in town. Do you guys want to see this?
Oh, go ahead, because
All right, so-
we'd be,
The Southborough Meadows lists 54 units on there, but when I look at the planning board numbers, they have it at 52 units. When I look at the Southborough Housing Authority, they list it at 56 units. So my question is, who's actually doing the countings? It sounds simple, but someone's messing this up.
Sir, may I for a second? If you're talking about the total inventory in town.
Yep.
I went over this as well, independently of Mr. Morris, with the previous town planner. What was Jennifer, actually, Jennifer Burney.
Yeah.
And all that information came from the assessor.
Okay,
So that's, and I was just as, concerned about the situation with the inventory and the max number of units and how it was appearing on the website as you are. And my vetting, to me, it was satisfactory that the calculation was correct at the time. So, I mean, we'd have to go back to, if you're questioning the veracity of what the assessor has, that's kind of another, that's outside of our purview, I would think.
some of these documents aren't coming out of the assessor's office, they're coming out of your office, I believe.
Well,
So some of the
but
numbers,
the calculation was based on information from the assessor.
okay. So,
well, the latest information, because of all of this. But I think you're right that before there was a tighter coordination with the assessor's office.
Yep.
The planning office and the, what would it be, the housing? Shopsy, would do it independently. And it caused these different numbers to come up. And as I said, and now Mr. Steiner said, it was pretty much a complete fresh recount was done
Good news, you guys list the numbers, and you have 52 units down for Southborough Meadows. So my question is, on the Southborough Meadows website, it listed as 56 units for over 55, right on the front page of that. Is it 52 or is it 56?
We'll have to look into that.
Okay, because it comes down to whether or not
There's a
this is...
specific file that the town planner has and keeps.
Yep,
Just to let you know, first of all, they had to get I believe, a special permit.
Well, that's what I was just going to close up by saying that we would not have gotten through the zoning board of appeals without establishing the units being available, because that's how the number gets generated. This board doesn't tell us how many we can have. The zoning board of appeals does. And that permit is of record, has been on file with the clerk's office since April 25th.
right, I wasn't
And
looking to
that's-
relitigate. I was just asking where the numbers came from and whether or not anyone actually has independently verified that, other than just take the assessor's, yep, looks
No.
good, this is the right number.
Actually, at the first hearing, Mr. Stein tasked me with that, and that's why I know about the special permit and where that calculation originated from for this particular time frame, because it gets done every January of the beginning of the year. So when I read through the special permit, I was able to follow up with the assessor, who showed me exactly where he got his numbers from, because they track where they are, and there's codes that go along with it. So I took that. What you see on the website is probably not most up to date, because I haven't had a chance in the last 2 months to confirm and get to see where it's shown. In the housing production plan itself, there are, since that was produced, and I read through it myself, there are minor little things that could be adjusted to bring it up to date. So yeah, it is probably in 3 different places. You see 3 different numbers, but I did look at the information, and I talked to the assessor twice. I had him show me it twice, so I was confirmed that the numbers were correct in my file that I reported back to Mr. Stein.
Okay, so is the Southborough Housing Authority, are they misrepresenting their 56 units, or the assessor made a
I
mistake there?
can't say that. I just know that the information I got verified that there were 12 units available in the big picture, in which this project would consume 11.
Right,
so
no, there were
the-
only 11 and a
there
half,
would be
and since you
one.
can't go over, it's
Mm.
only 11.
Yeah.
So there's not 12 units available.
I think something
All
like
right, so
that.
I was just
thought it
asking
was
for
12.
clarification and whether or not someone could actually ensure that they're right for the future. I wasn't looking to relitigate this one, but, because I know that time has passed,
Mhm.
just there seems to be conflicting information on the planning board website, so.
We'll fix that so that it's all correct.
Would you like this information here?
Sure, that'd be very helpful.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Hello, Sharon Shoemaker, 22 Wood Street. I just had a couple questions. I know the water's been discussed a lot, and I know it's supposed to go where it's supposed to go, but driving down my street, I'm pretty sure all this water will end in the pond on Wood Street, which if that floods, our street is blocked. So is there any mitigation, or is there anything that's done if the studies are wrong? Like what, I know there's been studies done about the water, and close neighbors have concerns, but it just dawned on me, we aren't in a butter, but we could be impacted by this. So how is that handled if, once this goes in the following spring, we can't get down our street?
Why don't you go first, Peter? Because I'll...
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
we go through a complete vetting process, so the design systems that we use are the accepted conventional systems, and then it goes through a peer review engineer to confirm that we are using the right parameters for this. So, I mean, we try very hard to make sure that we aren't going to have any impact, so I would say that our design does do that. I mean, that's why we put it together, and we did that right from the outset, because we didn't feel as though this project stood a chance if we couldn't confirm to the zoning board of appeals that this project actually worked at this location. So we had started that right out of the gate. We didn't just have a concept and back into it. We did a drainage system to support a project. So right from the get-go, there was enough put in place for this. If you have flooding today and your street gets blocked, in all likelihood, what we do here isn't going to make that any worse for sure, I can say that, but we're not going to necessarily make it any better in that we're taking and absorbing the water on our property as efficiently as we can with our new project. I'm not putting in some sort of system that's going to take care and alleviate a flooding problem downstream. So I'm not going to say that we are. But I will say to you that my experience when we do a system like this is that all of our water will be handled on site. And it doesn't necessarily do that as efficiently as you might think today, because sometimes when there's frozen ground, water doesn't get into the ground, it flashes off. In this case, when water comes down and we have our filter systems, it's going to get in there that it wouldn't normally get in there on a frozen ground situation. So sometimes seasonally, when you might have experienced some flooding, you may actually see that this does benefit you. But I can't assure you that.
There's only been once where the water's gone over the street, and that was when all of south of town flooded. But I guess what if, like, all of a sudden it is more? Is there anything that can be done, or is it just, well, it wasn't our fault, that's just the rain? And I just want to preface, I have been watching all these meetings, so I'm not showing up at the last minute. I have been watching, and I've seen your report, so I just wanted to preface that. And I guess that's my question, like, what if the year after, instead of it only flooding once, and we've been there since '99, it's flooded several times, but there hasn't been significant rain or anything changed environmentally? Like, I guess that's where I know the studies say it's good, but what if, is there anything that can be done, or you just hope for the best?
But it's, we're going into this with accepted engineering and science. So that's what I'm saying, is that based upon those things, there really shouldn't be the condition that you're expressing. But the what if, I
think
there's really a mechanism. You want to take it from here?
Take it from there.
Thank you.
There have been other subdivisions in town, very much like this, where the engineer comes in, they design the stormwater system, and then not long afterwards, there's problems that were not expected, flooding. And the neighbors would bring that to the attention of the DPW. The DPW would look at it, and they would verify that nothing that they have done caused it, and then they would come, and this has happened, to the town planner and say, we got a problem down here. It seems like the new stormwater system for this subdivision is creating a problem that was not anticipated. It was just the opposite, that we were told that it wasn't going to be a problem, and it was. And what would happen is we would call in the developer, even if there was everything was built and done, bring in the engineer and go through it. And I'm trying to think, it's got to be at least a half a dozen times. And I'm thinking almost all of them were south of the Mass Pike, which we know is, has challenging drainage. And in some cases, the developer had to come back in and revise the system. So we've had success in that repairs or additional work was done to the system so that the problem wouldn't happen again. The town doesn't just say, too bad, I guess we blew it. No, we don't do that.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, like, what's the next step if, and I understand you're building it to the best of the knowledge you have now, and I appreciate that, but just in the long run, if we can't get home, that's a problem. My other question was regarding the sight line, because I know it's been brought up, that's just a horrendous turn. And you talked about the berm on the corner. Is that that's staying what it is? I heard 4.5 feet on the corner. Is the sight line going to stay the same, is my question?
Yeah, we're not going to alter the sight lines along Parkerville Road and Southville Road. You have to go further south, if you will, from where the berm limit is on the property. So it doesn't really impact sight distance. Really what impacts sight distance is the old train station that's to the left looking to the east. That, you have very good sight distance to the west.
Right, and that gives me a couple extra seconds if I can go right, left, right, and go, and
Understand.
so, okay, those are my questions, just with a new planning.
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just have one question.
Sure, come on up.
How long do you actually hold the bond on something like this for
Now
for
ask.
mitigation after the fact?
Now ask the question.
How long do you actually hold the bond, or does the town hold the bond for the builder to deal with any future problems? Is it after it's all closed out and you accept the road? Is that when the kind of the bond payment gets closed out, or is there any fund that's set aside for potential mitigation?
It would depend on some, if there were some special conditions, there may be a bond that would last more than a year or two. It depends. We usually, once the road is finished, a certain amount of the bond is kept
Yep.
for 1 year, so that the finished road will survive 4 seasons and a winter. And then if everything's fine, then the bond gets released. Typically, everything's not fine, so the developer has to come back in and fix damaged curb or catch basins that have settled. And after they fix them, if everyone's happy, DPW, the neighbors, then the bond gets released.
So in issues in which there's potential flooding in the future, how have you been able to get the developers to actually pay years after the fact for correction?
I'd have to think about that if, because there were some situations where it was after the bond was released, but the developers, my memory's telling me that there was only one situation where the town had to go in and fix it, and that was Jack, it was across from Hidden Meadow. What's that street that goes up? It's where, it's,
Yeah, Kevin, went by Kevin Marines.
yeah, that one. What's the name of that street? It was in that neighborhood, off of Middle.
Hold the bond on that one, Dave?
We kept the bond on that one, but it wasn't enough to cover it, and the town wound up fixing it at a loss. But they fixed it. They didn't leave the neighbors in a lurch.
Okay. Yeah, my concern is at where I am, I'm right before the railroad tracks, and I've not had water in the basement yet, but I've had it come within inches of the basement floor looking through the sump pump hole. So I don't have a water problem, but if I do, who do I go to? Since at that point, I will have actually had my property value impacted, because now I'll have a basement that will be seen as a flooding basement instead of a dry basement. So what's my course of action in the future?
My experience has been that first thing to do is to go to the DPW,
Okay.
because they're always on the streets. And some
Right.
little things that they do, they may think is better or not a problem, and it may create the problem. But most of the time, it's not their problem, and then it gets shifted to us, and then we start to do
Okay.
the research and start to figure out what has changed.
So, okay, thanks.
Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to ask Karina and Jack and Peter to coordinate on the list of things that we still have to get cleaned up. So when you come back, we'll have a good shot at having a document in front of us that we can vote for approval. Any other questions or comments from the board? So let's go over the homework. I don't know. I want to do the homework first.
Okay, based on tonight's hearing, I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4 items, and correct me if I'm wrong. The first one is Kane Circle, that it should be, instead of Kane's Circle, should be Kane Circle for the driveway name. Then show the wetland buffers on the other side of the culvert as well, to be consistent on the property, showing all the buffers. It'd be nice to see all the setbacks too, but the buffers are the, usually when we used to do plans, we would show the setback around the whole property. But I think the buffers are the most important here.
Right, I mean, conservation, we have the buffers on the east side.
Mm-hmm. But the buffer is also on the other side too of that, if I'm not mistaken, right, Peter?
No, I agree. Yeah, and the zoning setbacks, I mean, there's certainly zoning setbacks
just
associated with the rest
to
of it.
clean it
We'll
up
put them both on.
For the
That's fine.
future, so nobody's confused and say, where did those buffers go, or, okay. We need to address Phil Jenks's question about the, tying in the horizontal datum. Because I think
I'll put math on there, and I'll tie it into the layout. The only problem is the bound is on the south side of the layout there, but there's a point of tangency, and we'll give you something.
maybe a reference or something saying, so someone who looks at the plan later has a solid idea of how you got there, so they can follow it.
Sure.
Like that.
I think that could be done as part of the as-built.
I'll just do this as part of the closure plan. I mean, we were trying to avoid another revision date, but we're gonna have one, so
You
I'll just
just-
put it on there. That's fine.
Okay, and then the last is the homeowner association language. I think the concept was to have you a little bit more spelled out, a little more specific.
We're
So-
gonna get together on that, talk about that.
Yeah, and you had listed some things for me that I wrote in pencil earlier, something more, and restrict, you're expanding the list, but restricting it to those things.
I follow.
Okay. And that's all I had, unless I forgot something.
Karina, is this gonna be put on the website for those, I know we didn't read into the record, but for those who, at home wanna see what the restrictions?
Yes, if it's allowed to post it, we can put this on the website. The language that Mr. Bartolini,
Barnley?
sorry, submitted during this hearing.
Okay.
We can put
Thank you.
that up. Sorry.
So there won't be
You wanna just stay there?
there won't be any reconciliation at all with the Southborough Housing Authority as far as that 58 versus 54 number? I mean, that's just a call to the Housing Authority, right? Are they renting out 58 units?
I'm going to do that as a matter of course of my regular business to make
Okay.
sure that everything's on straightforward for everybody, so we don't run into this again.
Because if there's a discrepancy between what they're doing and what's on the assessors, that has impact here.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can just gloss it over and
And not to
wait till another
discount the
day.
housing authority, but the assessor probably on the hierarchy has a, kind of a stronger overview of those numbers, and then maybe that trickles down and doesn't get updated. But if you want, you can always come by my office and I'll show you those calculations that I got directly.
I believe on the assessor's map, they are what they are, or on the assessor.
From the
My
assessor's
question is-
data.
Right, but at the housing authority, I would assume someone there knows what they're renting out. They're managing a number of units.
Yeah,
I know how many bedrooms are in my house. I don't need the assessor to tell me that there's 3.
I know. And I think just because it's been some changes lately, that
Yep.
if I follow through with that, we'll take care of that and clean up those things.
Yep.
That's part of my goals, to do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Agree, Peter and Jack,
Yeah, we
on
agreed the
the
assignment.
homework assignment? The numbers and the details of what we need? So, Elizabeth, do we have a form to request an extension of the approval period? Because the current approval period is the 5th, is that right, Jack? So we'd want to go to
The 19th.
like the 19th, but we'll put it on the agenda for the 15th, which you can show me now, 15th. Let's ask if, can you make it?
Yeah.
The agenda for the 15th is pretty full, so we might start earlier, like at 6:30, because we already have a continued public hearing, or we expect to have a continued public hearing that would start on the, at 7.
You guys make it 6:30 on the 15th?
I actually was not aware that we were going to have a planning board meeting on the 15th, and I have a work event that night, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to attend at all that evening.
Do you know about Mimi? She'll be back by then?
Yes, I think Mimi will be back. I think she's just gone this week.
3 of us.
We're not gonna close, we don't have.
Phil's okay?
Yeah, said yes.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mills?
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
hold on a second. Mike, Jack.
Is it possible to close the public hearing with just these cleanup items so that in case there's a quorum problem, we'll be okay?
Originally, we talked about being here, at this meeting a month later, that we could get a vote this evening, and these are items that you can condition your approval on, because each one of them are stated. You were kind of going pretty quickly there, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but if you would consider it, that's how we had left things at the last meeting.
I think if any issues do come up that need to be handled in a public meeting, it'll allow us to do it. We can close the public hearing and vote on it in the same night.
Right.
If we close the public hearing now, something comes up that is required to be done in the public hearing, we've got an issue that could involve re-advertising a hearing.
It's a valid question, Peter, but I think the likelihood of a problem continuing the hearing is, as opposed to closing it, we're better off continuing it. Mr. Mills, did you get the form?
We'll take care of that, but we're gonna go for the earlier time slot, correct? We don't have to be.
Yeah, but we can't continue the hearing to a date beyond the current approval period. So is that your request, Mr. Bartolini, to continue the public hearings to the May 19th?
May 19th, yes.
That's your request, and you will fill out the form tonight before
Yes.
you leave? Mr. Mills, on continuing the public, on extending the approval period to the 19th.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we extend the approval period for the major site plan for Kane's Crossing and for May 19th.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we extend the public hearing for the major site plan review for Kane's Crossing, 141 Southville Road, to May 15th at 6:30 p.m. and extend the public hearing for the lower impact development for Kane's Crossing, 141 Southville Road, to May 15th at 6:35 p.m.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. We will see you on the 15th at 6:30. And after you fill it out and sign it, I'll sign it, and then you can get a copy tomorrow if you want, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you. You do it now, Jack. All right, next item on the agenda is, we're running a little bit beyond here in time. 7:30, public hearing, definitive subdivision, Chestnut Meadow, 0 Chestnut Hill Road. And 7:35, public hearing, lower impact development, Chestnut Meadow, 0 Chestnut Hill Road. Gonna let you set up, George? You gonna use,
Order. Procedural question.
you gotta use the mic.
Procedural question. Are we going to have a change in the planning board during the pendency of this particular project?
A change in the planning board
Yes,
due to the election?
yes,
It's possible.
it is.
I'm unopposed, but I guess if there were enough write-ins,
Okay.
I think that's...
All right, fine. I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be changing a lot of members in the next few weeks.
No, the only member that's up for re-election is myself, and I took out the papers, and no one else did. So unless there's more write-ins than votes for me, then I expect to be here. Elizabeth. George,
Yes,
there's a little history with this. Were you gonna, this is your third town planner with this one?
it is.
Could you go back to at least that time at the beginning, and then take us up to the, I don't know if you were usually do that, but I want to go back to those early discussions with Jennifer Burney back in, what, 2015?
Yes.
Oh, and before you start, we'd like you to introduce yourself and who's here with you.
For the record.
Before we do that, we're going to read the public
All right.
hearing notice.
I get you.
Okay, this is a public hearing notice for definitive subdivision approval and special permit for lower impact development. Per section 174-10 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, May 1st, 2017, in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, to consider the application of D. Bruce Wheeler, trustee of Habitat Acquisition and Permitting Trust, for definitive subdivision plan approval at 7:30 p.m. Per section 174-10.1 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, May 1st, 2017, at the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, to consider the application of D. Bruce Wheeler, trustee of the Habitat Acquisition and Permitting Trust, for lower impact development special permit at 7:35 p.m. These hearings concern the development of a 12-lot definitive subdivision of a 15.74 plus or minus acre parcel located at 0 Chestnut Hill Road, Assessors Map 72, Parcel 3. A copy of the plans and applications may be reviewed at the office of the planning board at the townhouse during normal business hours. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed plan should appear at the time and place designated.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Connors.
My name is George Connors. I'm an engineer at Cornerstone. I'm also an attorney. I'm representing Habitat tonight on their project that's at Chestnut Hill Road. With me is George Gallagher. He's the Director of Operations at Habitat. And Habitat has been working on this particular piece of property since back in September of 2015, when we initially met with Jen Burney informally in this room during the day. Mr. Wheeler and his acquisitions man, Mr. Ahern, myself and Mike Sullivan met with Ms. Burney to discuss some plans for this particular site. Those discussions revolved around various applications of the conventional and the major residential development, which included a cluster layout. They went forward with the planning board on 3 occasions, in November and I think in January. And additionally, we met with Shopsy relative to affordable units on the site at a meeting down the street at the Board of Health office. We also met with the Open Space Committee at their building over, I think it's on Courteville Road, discussing how a project could fit into this particular site under the requirements of the major residential subdivision. At that time, we also discussed with Ms. Burney, and I think she's informed you, that the application of a conventional zone subdivision is an as-of-right use, and we chose to go forward with that particular plan, which is before you tonight, and not exercise under the major residential subdivision. Is that sufficient for the introduction?
Very good, thank you.
So we have a 15 and a 3/4 acre parcel on Chestnut Hill Road at the corner. The site is right here. We have the MDC down to the south of it. This is the railroad, and we have Fisher Road here. Across from that site is Andrews Way and Barn Lane, 2 residential subdivisions. There's a existing house with some sort of facility beside it up at Northborough Road. And basically all the land to the south of this for quite a ways is open space and or MDC, and across the street is a little bit of MDC land as well. So this is our site in Locust. And this is the GIS map. We have Fisher Street and of course the site, and we've laid out on this in the field area the subdivision proper. I'll just go through the surrounding topography and land uses. There is a MDC channel that comes down along here. That's been mapped for wetlands, and we have various setback distances on the plan. There's some wetlands along the back end here that come down and tie into that. Those have been mapped, and there's some wetlands over in this area near the railroad. So the site is surrounded, about 3/4 of it, with wetlands. Down in this location, there's an abandoned road, and then of course we have Chestnut Hill Road going out about 1,030 feet to Northborough Road. This is a agricultural field. There was a small depression in this location here near lots 1 and 2 that was ponding. We did quite a bit of extensive work with Conservation Commission and identified that that is not a regulatable wetland. It does have some habitat value that we've created along the edge of the existing wetlands, expanding their no-touch zone out a little bit. And that habitat, that type of soil and type of ground cover and type of tree cover is providing a type of habitat that would replicate the area that was in question in here that did flood in certain times. It flooded because it was compacted agricultural soil. There had been some excavation in that area looking at previous USGS historical mapping. There was a higher elevation there. It's our belief as we dug through there that we found a sand that was predominantly used in brick works to make the mortar. We believe that at the time that that changed in the superficial mapping by the USGS, this aqueduct was being put in. And in the edges of this area, which was filled with some crap and debris, we could find that particular sand, a very uniform grained sand that would make mortar for the bricks. So we believe that they came in and mined that out. They put in all sorts of refill type material, including ties for construction forms and things of that nature. And then the soil that was on the top, which was a loam material, just got compacted and compacted and compacted, being below grade of the surface there. This site literally does not drain off site. There is the existing wetlands, but this entire area generally drains down to this location and does not leave the site because of that depression in the existing conditions. And here is a map of the site as we propose it. We have the 12 lots on a 1,000-foot of road. coming in from Chestnut Hill Road. There's adequate sight distance. There's probably close to 1,000 in this direction and well over 300 feet in this direction. We anticipate 7 cars per AM peak and 12 cars in the PM peak coming into the site. The green line is the wetland line, the wetland resource line. And then we have our stormwater going all along this area here, along the perimeter lower end of the site. And that's catching water from this portion of the site in this direction, including the houses. They'll drain to the street. These will drain to the stormwater conveyance system, which is both a swale discharging out to that location and a stormwater basin. It'll also pick up the road here and come into the site and discharge there. Each of the houses will have 2 sets of dry wells, one in the front, one in the back. The front portion of the site will drain in this direction to 2 stormwater basins. As you remember, I talked about that low area not draining off site. So what we have is high infiltration. The sands and gravels there, as I indicated earlier, they mined some brick sand out of here. This is a gravel outwash from the glacial deposits. So these are high infiltration rate soils. And we have literally no water leaving the site. It's just an overflow system, and we have all of the infiltration taking place, as you can see from the stormwater calculations. The lots come through here, and they reach as many as 60,000 square feet, generally just an acre and above. So they go from just over an acre to about an acre and a half. The general area through here is going to have septics in the front. These 3 lots are going to have septics in the back. They've all been tested with the Board of Health present, both for percolation tests and soil stratigraphy and water table. In the front here, because of that fill that was associated with the mining, the back locations on these lots will have the septic systems. The road comes in at 4% and then goes 0.8% all the way up to about here and then down at 1% towards the back. And it is about a 4-foot fill throughout. You can see the yellow is the surface of the road, and what we have is orange dots along here that indicate the approximate centerline grade. So there is a fair amount of fill, and that fill is there because it will match the septic system designs that will come in the future. The groundwater tables are high in this area, and the septic designs have decided or dictated the road grades. There's our drainage system coming at the end, picking up this section of road. There's the drainage system picking up half of this road, and the rest of it goes towards the front of the site. There are 2 paved swales at the very low point, and they take water into this basin and then carry it across to the other side in order to have some relief in case there's frozen conditions or something like that. The existing site, as you had seen on the map, is about 90% open space agricultural, and then there's between 5% wetlands and 5% tree cover surrounding it. It's all a farm field. It's been mowed several times over the last many years. We have a INRAD that has approved the wetland line with conservation. We also have a determination of applicability that allowed us to consider moving whatever wetland value may have been in this little depression to the perimeter of the site, and that's in a open space no-touch buffer. Surrounding the site, we have 10% of open space. The site is got 83% of it very well drained soil, and then this 17% in the very center where that depression has lousy soil. And you can actually see that depression if you go out on the site before the grass gets too high. I'm able to answer any questions you may have, or hopefully answer them.
Thank you. This is the second of 3 public hearings that we have tonight. So we're going to get as much done as we can It's my understanding that the approval period goes to July 10th. Is that what you have, George?
I haven't looked at that. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at that.
Well, we want to make sure that we manage these public hearings for the different proponents, including you, so that we can make most efficient the times that the planning board meets and try to stay as close as we can to the, approval periods. But we do expect some flexibility. As I said earlier, it's been a while since the Southborough and the planning board has done a residential subdivision. They used to be one right after the other during the 80s and the 90s, but most recently it's been very, very few, and especially a conventional subdivision that you're proposing.
Okay.
So there may be a little bit of a learning curve for some of the planning board members and a period of re-remembering for some others. So I'll open it up to the board for questions, and then usually at this first meeting that we have, we try to make sure there's enough time for the neighbors to speak on this. So I'll open it up. Mr. Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to relay some concerns. My colleague, Mimi Luttrell, who could not be here tonight, brought some things to my attention from her review of the packet that I'd just like to raise on her behalf. But I've read through these, and they seem like valid questions. I was looking through the packet of the materials I received for the environmental assessment. I couldn't find it. Mrs. Luttrell had questioned who prepared the environmental assessment, and she indicated that it was left unsigned. And per town code, it shall be prepared by a civil engineer and an architect or landscape architect.
It was prepared by Mr. Colonna at our office and myself.
So, without asking you to go through the whole, can you indicate where I could find those signatures?
Oh, there is no signature on it. We
So
can add that.
this is your attestation that you and Mr. Colonna, does that fulfill the term civil engineer and an architect or landscape architect? Does that meet our
I don't know,
town
I'd have to
code?
look at that particular regulation. It certainly is
Okay,
not
that's-
with the landscape architect.
Sure, it's 244-10D.
Okay.
Mrs. Luttrell goes on to question, the assessment does not compare development alternatives as required.
That's correct, because we're doing a conventional subdivision as of right. I think if you recall, when we talked about this, it was asserted by Ms. Burney and myself that there is a as-of-right use under a case called Wall Street Development versus Westwood. So it is a definitive subdivision under the state statute.
Okay. She said that the scope of the analysis was not approved by the planning board prior to preparation as required.
That was submitted to you in draft form back in probably October of 2015 and discussed at that particular point in time.
Okay. I guess we would have to go back and check to see if we took a vote as a board.
I reviewed all the minutes of the meetings during that time period. I found no reference to any of the meetings we had. I did find reference in the Shopsy minutes of meetings, but not in the planning board. Don't know why.
Ms. Luttrell goes on to say, number 2 of the environmental assessment states that the natural heritage and endangered species maps do not show any specific habitats on or in close proximity to the site. However, the Conservation Commission minutes dated July 4th of 2016 state that bobolink pairs were observed on the property. This is a species whose numbers are in rapid decline.
That may be true, but the NHESP map does not show that.
The development impact statement included with the LID application states that there is 1 acres of protected open space. Much of the open space easement appears to contain wetlands. Per definition, wetlands cannot be considered open space for purposes of calculation of the open space requirements.
The response to that is that your requirements are a 10% of the site. Alternatively, Section 81U of the subdivision control law, you can elect to acquire one lot, or we hold one lot for 3 years. Either way, we don't care.
The 10-foot wide collar configuration of open space has little open space value, will not serve as wildlife habitat, wildlife corridors, and does not preserve the open, rural character of the town, which is a major objective of the board per 244-12D.
Again, I'd respond that this is a as-of-right subdivision. The Conservation Commission and myself, along with the environmental consultants, which included Marianne DePinto, Deshang Wang, and Scott Goddard, along with your consultant, all agreed that the area adjacent to the existing wetlands and its slope, its ground cover, were the best place to relocate whatever values, and we didn't agree on the values for this low area, in that location. So I would disagree with that conclusion of Ms. Luttrell's.
The street exceeds the maximum length per 244-13. Paragraph 4, dead-end streets shall not exceed the lesser of 1,000 feet or the minimum length necessary to accommodate 12 lots with the minimum permitted frontage along both sides of the street.
We're at 1,000 feet. I'll rest on that.
And last but not least, the species of street trees not identified.
That's correct. We haven't identified them. There's so many of them. We'll work it out with your tree warden at some particular point in time. A monoculture, if it's attacked by disease, would wipe them all out. So we would come along with several different kinds. At least that would be my suggestion.
Thanks very much.
Mr. Jenks?
Good evening. Would you tell me again the sight lines to the right and left as you exit the driveway?
This you can see all the way up to Northborough Road. It's 1,035 feet. And this direction you can see.
Yeah, you need the microphone, George.
I'm sorry. Up Chestnut Hill Road, when you exit that, you can see all the way to Northborough Road. It's 1,035 feet. And in this direction to this bend in the road is 300 feet. You can see that distance.
Okay. Have you discussed the exit of that driveway or roadway with either the police chief or DPW regarding the exit onto a curve?
The location of the roadway is the same as it was back in 2015 in discussion plans that we had with the task force, DPW, fire chief, police, DPW, Ms. Galligan, I believe, the planner, and a few others. I don't remember exactly. I have the notes. But it's always been at that particular location. It had no issues with any of that relative to sight distance or its access onto the street. It is the most safe location at that location because it does give you sight distance in either way. The only issue that came up relative to a road here is its distance on a one-way street to Fisher Road. And that is memorialized in the 4/12/17 letter from the fire department on the site plan review to you.
I assume then there is no thought at all about widening or doing anything that would allow two-way access?
On the first segment of Chestnut Hill Road, coming about, I would say, halfway, there are guardrails. I drove that tonight. There's a foot or so on either side of the pavement to the guardrail. There was some discussion about an opticom being installed to stop any traffic at this location from coming down if a fire truck came. That discussion didn't go any further than it did back in 2015 as to it's a possibility.
What you're thinking about that?
What's my thinking?
Yes.
I think it's a solution. I don't know if it's the solution that everyone would accept, but I think it's an excellent solution.
Have you provided for snow storage? It's a nice thing to be talking about today, isn't it?
Gonna need the mic, so.
All along the street, there's plenty of room for for snow storage.
Along your street,
Yes.
is it your anticipation that that will be a public street?
Yes.
And you mentioned I think you mentioned the fill under the street. Said there was a considerable amount of fill.
Yes, if you see those kind of wavy lines below the more linear, yeah.
Yep.
That's the existing center left and right sidelines. At one point, they're the same for half of the road. So there's about 4 feet of fill on average along that entire road.
And the fill is a lot wider than the road will be.
Yes, it will go into the lots by, I don't know, 75 feet or more to allow for the septic systems in the front to be built. They're in fill. They're filled septic systems. They have to be 4 feet above groundwater. It takes a couple feet to build them. So that grade, the 4 feet and a couple feet, will be conducive to that final design that we have on that profile.
Will you be getting that fill from the site?
No.
The dash lines on the lots here, I assume, are the frontage and side yard. These? That's,
Yes, that's correct.
you don't show at this point any house locations or driveways.
That's correct, we don't.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I have any other questions right now.
Mr. Mills?
Thank you. There's no plans to make any changes to Chestnut Hill Road, I take it? It's one way currently going north.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. What-
We're not proposing that.
Right, so that it's still gonna be one way, as far as you know, it's still gonna be one way, and when you exit, you're gonna have to go out.
Yes,
to Northborough Road. Okay.
yes.
Have you met with the Open Space Committee at all to discuss how you've designated the open space or anything like that?
No, we met with the Open Space Committee back in October of 2015, and based on those meetings and meetings with you and evaluating the options for the site, we've chosen to go with the definitive. So, no, we have not met with the open space on this particular open space layout.
So in the area that had the depression, I believe is what you referred to it as, I think it's across from lot.
If you look at sheet 1 of 6, you can see where it is.
Yes.
Little center in the front action.
That's where you mentioned it gets wet, is that correct?
That is a portion of where it gets wet. If you drew a oval that went almost to the property line, about that width, but a lot longer, looked like a torpedo, that area is area that got wet. This particular 2,700 square feet, is that what it is? 3,000 square feet below the 270 contour, which is the lowest in that area, is an area that had some indication of a close to 50% vegetation change, wetland-type vegetation. And it was argued that that could be habitat value and regulated under the local bylaw. So what we agreed to and got an RDA on is that that value would be replicated along the edge of the existing wetland buffer zone. There's a no-touch adjacent to the buffer zone of a specific distance. We added another 5 or so feet to that and replicated that land area by a factor of over 1 to 1. And that was approved by Conservation.
We got that? We get that from Conservation and approval? You're completely through Conservation? Is that?
No, we're through with the RDA, determining the wetland, and the abbreviated notice of, and the request for determination. The request for determination dealt with, is this a wetland resource? And the resolution to that was, it may be. We could argue about it and go to court and DEP and all that. Or we could simply replicate that 3,000 square feet at greater than 1 to 1 along the perimeter of the wetland, no touch. And that was the resolution, and we have a document to that effect.
I'm good for tonight. Thank you.
The question was asked about the 1,000 feet,
Yes.
and you said you stand by the 1,000 feet. It would seem to me, by reading that 244, 13 streets, 13, 4, A4, that the 1,000 feet, but it's the lesser of that, or the minimum length necessary to accommodate 12 lots, with the minimum permitted frontage along both sides of such street. Do you have
Being
a-
150 times 6,
Right,
which is 950.
yeah.
We disagree with that. We are at 1,000, and that,
What, you disagree with, why do you, what's,
we're saying that the 1,000 is controlling.
even though it's a greater number than 950?
Yes.
So what part of lesser don't you agree with?
The way it's written.
We're gonna have to have a discussion on that one, George.
I'm sure we will.
I'm rusty on this stuff, but I don't ever remember anybody challenging this one.
Okay.
I'm sure, when I looked at the plan, I think I already know the answer, but tell us about the requirement where straight segments of more than 400 feet are not allowed. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Not off the top of my head.
Maybe Vito was.
Perhaps, yes, I'm sure he was. He drew the plan.
I'm looking at the, at the plan that shows the center line going to the 1,000 feet at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay,
And each of the stations from the street, from Chestnut Hill Road, station 00, it goes to about station 3+0.
approximately, yes. I think the PC is at 27524.
Oh, I see, right, yep. So you're okay there. And then, just looks like around station 3+81,
Okay,
it seems to stay straight to 7+64, so that's under 400. And then you have what appears to be a very, very slight radius from that PC to the end of the cul-de-sac. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And that very slight curve is how you're getting around the straight, over 400 feet being straight.
Yes.
So, since you said you weren't familiar with that, then we have to give Vito credit for that one?
Vito's pretty good.
Earlier, when you were talking with Mr. Jenks, I apologize because Mr. Mills and I were looking at one of the parts of another plan. And he asked you a question, and I think your answer was that you agreed or you thought it was a good solution.
For the Opticom?
I don't know what you were talking about.
Okay.
What was that about? Could you go over that again?
There was a question as to using a one-way street, basically the wrong way, for a fire truck to come in. Maybe it would come in from Marlborough. So you could put a Opticom, which is a actuator that the fire or the police have, to stop traffic at a traffic signal and allow the vehicle as it approaches it, detecting it by Doppler, to open that lane, which would be very much similarly applied at this location to a light that stops people from coming around the corner onto that straight segment of Chestnut Road from the subdivision road to Northborough Road.
Thank you for going over that. I didn't, when I heard that you thought something was a good solution, I caught my ear.
That's not very fair.
No, I meant that as I think as a compliment, but I don't think I said it right. How about the water for the site?
Wells and septics,
Well water.
yes.
We have a note, did you see the note from the fire chief? 1,500 feet is the nearest hydrant, I think.
Uh-huh. I'm not sure it's 15. I know that there is water at the intersection at Northborough Road, and that's
At the-
1,030. I think there's a fire hydrant fairly close to that. So I don't know if it's exactly 1,500.
Is there a water line going over the railroad bridge?
There's a water line up to it. Does it go over? I don't know.
It does. Mr. Johnson says it does.
Great. But that doesn't mean anything to us, because we're on this side of it. There
Right.
is a gate system right at Northborough Road, approximately opposite Chestnut Road.
We, we sent this set of plans and documents to our consultant, Fuss and O'Neill, and they responded this afternoon at 4:30. So we haven't had a chance to look at their response. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
We'll give you a copy before you leave.
Thank you.
The town planner and I were here until almost that time today and hadn't seen it, and then when she came back just before tonight's meeting, it was in the email from 4:30, so we haven't looked at it either.
Okay.
But at least we have it, and we can start looking at it. I'm gonna, if there's no more questions or comments from the board, I'll open it up to the public.
Elizabeth did forward
Oh, you sent it electronically, Elizabeth?
But you sent, I think you forwarded the comments right after they came to the applicants, to the engineers. You know, the review comments from Fuss and O'Neill. Yeah, you did not. Oh, okay, you copied them.
And you have those in your hand now, George.
I do.
Open it up to the public. Anyone? Freddie, good evening.
Hi, I'm Freddie Gillespie, and 78 Southville Road. I'm a member of the Open Space Preservation Commission, but I'm not speaking for the commission, but we did meet and review the plans. Start off with, because of when they arrived in our mailbox, and then when we could have a meeting, that was 4/13. We didn't have a meeting till the 24th, and with the annual town meeting, we don't have our official letter ready, that I will make sure, once it's done, that you will get it timely. But we're also requesting, we discussed, we would like to request that we get a full set of plans on all projects with an open space component. That was the past practice. We understand we were not included in the distribution list given to Elizabeth and Corinna. So, you know, that was a request we wanted to make. And to get them as soon as they come in, because sometimes, you know, depending on our meeting schedules, we don't want to have to be running last minute, so the applicants don't get our comments in a timely manner. First, so we met, we discussed it, but I don't have an official approved letter from us, so I don't want to claim this is from the Open Space Commission, but I would say it's probably pretty darn tootin' close to what will be coming in from us when we do that. So, first I'd like to thank the applicant for coming in with a proposal that tries to address the open space requirements as we understand them. Our first concern was that the open space may include wetlands. Wetlands may not count towards the 10% open space requirement. 20-foot, or in this case, the 25-foot no disturb upland buffer may be included in the open space requirement, but we have a long history and tradition, and I believe opinions from town council stating that it's upland, not wetlands, in the 10%. We acknowledge this is not a flexible subdivision, but this has been a long-term practice and that the planning board has pretty much adhered to. So it appears that all of the wetlands in the parcel are located in the open space easements. So based on that, it was a little hard to, we didn't have a full set of plans to review ahead of time, and then we did have one that we quickly looked at our meeting. But from our quick look, it appears that all of the wetlands are in the open space, and if you do the math, total wetlands on the property is 0.72 acres, as listed on the erosion control plan. The open space is indicated at 1.8 acres, which leaves 1.0 acres meeting the required open space upland. And then the 10% requirement is 1.574. Therefore, an additional 0.494 uplands open space is required. It's about a half acre. So we're hoping that can be on the next set of plans. We request that the plans indicate how much upland open space is on each lot, as well as the total open space on each lot. We request that the open space table identify each parcel that has an open space easement with the amount of wetland open space and upland open space listed. We also request that the total subdivision open space calculations include a list of each easement identifying the land area of upland and wetland for each easement, so that it's segmented by lot. And we had a question about what the limit of work line represents. We believe this is an erosion control maybe line, but from our quick review, it appears there is a lot of upland available in the limit of work area that's not going to be disturbed, and that is the type of land, if it's not going to be disturbed, that would meet the requirements of the 10% upland, and it's also not just upland, but it's undisturbed, which is why we looked at that. And this is for your consideration. We're not trying to make the plan, but we looked at it and we, said you need more uplands, and is it possible to do that? We also strongly recommend that the 10% upland open space be configured into a more substantial shape than in a narrow perimeter strip to make the open space more cohesive. Regulation states a portion of each lot be allocated to open space. We feel a greater benefit would be achieved by having the layout reconfigured, and therefore recommend if a more substantial parcel were created, the planning board waive that the open space be on a portion of each lot. This would better meet the town's intent for requiring open space and create better open space values while reducing future encroachment opportunities. Some of these perimeters are just actually an invitation to encroach. We note that some lots have acreage, and this is a real, just an observation. Some of the lots have acreage over the minimum required 1 acre. We suggest taking another look to see if the open space could be a separate parcel instead of easements on the house lots. This could substantially reduce future encroachments. There could be a way to do it that adds value to the subdivision. We recognize there's not any requirement to do this, but felt it could make a better project. And just as a side note, there's potential tax benefits for the developer if that was donated to a land trust. I think there's some land next to some land owned by a land trust. We recognize there is no public access requirement, and if the proponent was inclined to have a separate lot, that would not, we weren't proposing that it be public access or that they would lose any of their rights in any way. We also recommend that on the open space easements, at every angle point, there should be an open space boundary marker. And I think once we go through it and have some time to look at the plans again, or if there's a new set, we'd have an actual official letter. And again, I want to be clear, I'm saying this, we recommend, this is from our notes, but it's really me stating what my interpretation of our meeting was. And on my very own recommendation, this was not discussed at our meeting, it just occurred to me that I believe before this project is finalized, we will be having the Mass Audubon deed research follow-up recommendations in the deed research subcommittee before the full planning board, hopefully for approval of that recommendation, and that those recommendations with the approved process be used and followed in the decision when you're writing the requirements for the open space, what's in the deeds, what's in the, how it's going to be marked off. So that's it.
Any comments, George? Or
Just one, the extra area in some of the lots, because this is a nitrogen-sensitive zone where septics and wells are on the lots, you need 10,000 square feet for each bedroom. So some of these houses that are, some of these lots that are over 40,000 square feet, if they're 50 or 60, they can have more bedrooms. So that's why some of them are bigger. So we wouldn't be giving up that land for that reason. We'll look at all the other stuff. That is easy to look at.
you're saying that the area of some of the lots will contain the septic system, and that eats up a lot of the lot.
No, no. In a nitrogen-sensitive zone where you have a septic and a well on the lot, DEP defines that as a nitrogen-sensitive zone and requires 10,000 square feet of land area per bedroom. So a 1 acre lot can have 4 bedrooms, but a 50,000 square foot lot could have 5. Some of these houses, they'll want to have more bedrooms. So that's why some of them are larger. And we wouldn't be giving up that land for that purpose of open space.
Well, the property owner would own the whole lot. It would just be a portion of the lot that was designated as open.
I'll talk with Board of Health about that. You may be right.
Because I think, and I'm gonna go back to Freddie on this, there's many different kinds of open space in Southborough. Everything from woods to playing fields to publicly owned, town-owned open space, nonprofit-owned, and private homeowners own open space on their lot. And I'm trying to remember if some of the open space that we have already in town actually has components of a septic system within the open space. In other words, it would be...
I don't know about that, but nitrogen aggregation is the way that you can allocate land that is not on the lot to the 10,000 square foot per bedroom requirement. And that's a process through DEP. But it has to be in a certain hydrologic and geohydrologic regime for that to happen. And I'm not sure that it would happen on all these lots.
Okay. Okay, that's good information. Yes, Freddie?
So, thank you for that information. We weren't aware of it, and I would say to Mr. Morris's comment, as we know through this review process we have, there's all kinds of open space in town. Not all of it met the actual zoning requirements, so I wouldn't say just because we have it, it's an allowed use. We go back to the definition and the requirements in the bylaw as written. I would say that I believe the 10% is undisturbed, which by definition would mean no septic, because I believe you have to disturb land. But I'm not sure what this nitrogen sensitive, if it's just space, land that's set aside that has to be available to absorb. I'm not even sure what the terms are, but as long as you're not grading or putting piping underneath it, it certainly doesn't seem like that would be a problem. But we will need to find out more about what that is. But again, even if the lots are bigger, if there's, our reading of limit of work means there's no work beyond that. Can I ask that question? Is that what the line means? There's no work beyond that line at all during the whole development?
During the construction of it, that's where we're saying you don't have to go in order to construct the houses and the lots and the roads and the drainage and all of that. So we put that at a location that does all that. Whether later on, when somebody comes in and occupies the house and there's land that isn't within the conservation no-touch zone that we've modified, they potentially could go to that particular location. So it is not final in perpetuity. The line that is the no-touch limit that's been modified is the particular line.
Thank you. So I think that sort of meets what we thought it did. It doesn't mean it's a permanent no-touch beyond that line, but it does mean it would meet, the land beyond that would meet the requirements for non-disturbed land, and thought that would be a place where this half acre could potentially come from. But again, we strongly were looking for, it's not a larger parcel, more substantial, not, I believe it's 10 feet wide in some areas, and I believe that was, in looking at it, the applicant appears to have met the requirement that there's some portion of each lot be open space, and we believe that's something that we would support, looking at putting more of the open space all in one, more of a bulk process. And particularly the lots we were looking at the back side of the cul-de-sac, which seemed to be the larger lots and seemed to have some, if my memory is correct, more of the land was beyond the limit of work. I could be mistaken there, because it was we didn't have a lot of time with the plans, because we didn't have a full set. So, thank you for the consideration of these, and we'll get you a formal letter, and if there's another subsequent set of plans, we'd be happy to look at a full set as soon as they're available.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll go back to the planning board. Any more questions or comments? So our next meeting is May 15th, and are you able to come back then?
Yeah, I've read through that letter. It's going to be easy to correct and get into you by the end of the week. So if that's enough time for them to re-review, happy to come back.
We're looking at 7 o'clock on May 15th, Monday, May 15th.
Is that a real 7? Okay.
This is the one you gave me. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we extend the public hearing for the definitive subdivision for Chestnut Meadow, 0 Chestnut Hill Road, to 7 PM on May 15th, and extend the lower impact development for Chestnut Meadow at 0 Chestnut Hill Road to 7:05 PM.
Second?
On May 15th.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. We'll see you on the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mills.
Make a motion for a 2-minute recess.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? 4-0. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Planning Board is back in session. Good evening. Next item on the agenda is major site plan, Ken's Foods Incorporated, 325 Turnpike Road. This is the public hearing. I'll ask the town planner to read the public hearing notice.
Hi. This is a public hearing notice for site plan approval and special permit for lower impact development. Per section 174-10 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, May 1st, 2017, in the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, to consider the application of James Sotheby, CFO of Ken's Foods, Inc., for site plan approval at 8:15 p.m. Per section 174-10.1 of the Southborough zoning code, the planning board of the town of Southborough shall hold a public hearing on Monday, May 1st, 2017, at the Thomas J. McAuliffe Hearing Room, second floor townhouse, to consider the application of James Sotheby, CFO of Ken's Food, Inc., for lower impact development special permit at 8:20 p.m. These hearings concern the redevelopment of property located at 325 Turnpike Road, Assessors Map 26, lots 2 and 10, to make modifications to the parking area and stormwater drainage system. A copy of the plans and applications may be reviewed at the office of the planning board at the townhouse during normal business hours. Any person wishing to be heard on the proposed plan should appear at the time and place designated.
Thank you. Again, around 4:30 today, we received comments back from our consultant. Did you get a copy of those, Bill?
Just got them.
You have them now, yeah.
Right.
We haven't, as I said earlier, we haven't looked at them either. And there were no comments from public safety? No other town departments?
No, I think they were good. We had response from the Board of Health and the Fire Department as requested at the last hearing.
Every department.
Yeah.
Every department, I think.
I'm sorry?
I know they all responded.
Several departments responded.
Oh, yes, I mean, but the second round where, everybody had, it was the end of them.
Yeah, right, thank you.
So, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Morris. I'm Bill Pizzoni. I'm with Dave Pitney. We're the attorneys for Ken's Foods. With me tonight is Scott Doty of John G. Crow Associates and Jim Bourne from Ken's. I'm just going to go over the project, not the project, but the existing conditions. It's 325 Turnpike Road. We've actually been in before the zoning board several times over the last 3 or 4 years for an expansion and for a height variance, which we're not going to implement. We're going to keep the box the size it is, other than some work in the area of, on the west side for the loading dock area. The lot is split. However, all the work that we're going to be doing at this phase is in the industrial park district, all up front in this section here. And in fact, it's really back in this corner where there was some storage and stacking, and in this area where the loading docks are and where the trucks would turn around. And we're going to be putting some drainage structures here and back here as well. I'll let Scott run you through the program pretty much because he's the expert. But we're not increasing the size of the building. We're not adding parking spaces. In fact, we're reducing pavement and we're reducing the number of parking spaces that already exist. There is area to put parking on what we're going to leave there, but we don't want to overstripe the site and encourage it, and we don't need it because inside the building is going to be fully automated. There'll only be a few, there won't be like 3 changeovers of people there 2 or 3 times a day, and a lot of people milling around. It's going to be a high use automated system inside, which trucking won't be in the back here. It'll just be in this area here, and employee parking will be back there. With that, one other point. When we first were going to come forward with this, we looked at it because we didn't think we triggered major site plan review. So I had talked to the planner, as she was brand new at the time coming in, and she talked with Don, the chairman. And we all felt, I think, that it only takes one vote to bump it up from minor to major, so we figured we'd just start here. So the likelihood, because of what's going to go on there, we thought you'd want to look at it and see it closely. So I'll turn it over to Scott.
Before you do that, Bill, I'll leave this up to you as to who answers it. I remember going to the ZBA hearings when you were looking for the height,
Yes.
and now you've told us tonight, first I've heard of it, that you're not going to do that.
It's,
So can you, I know that they said that the inside of the building, at one end of the building, raw materials would come in, and on the other end of the building, the finished product would be packaged and ready to roll out to stores.
that's what's happening today, right?
So
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what happened, what you had planned with the 60 feet height, and what has changed relative to that?
They have some alternative locations that they can use, and the way the building is going to be set up, they figure this will meet their needs without causing a major impact to the area.
And your decision, or you're working with the town planner to come for major site plan, I respect that, because we all know that the neighbors live right near there, and it's not,
Right.
it's no one's fault, it's just the way the zoning is set up.
Yeah.
And most recently with Ken's, it's been my memory that you've been a good neighbor to the neighbors, and you've done quite a bit of mitigation. And what I'm hearing tonight, there's going to be even a softer site than previously thought of. So, but it's very important that what we do here is in public and let the neighbors get to see what's going
Yeah,
on.
we actually notified the neighbors that we weren't going to go up, we weren't going to expand out, and that we were moving to the existing structure. And in fact, what we're going to do for the circulation here is going to tone down some of the noise, the backing up of trucks, because we get a lot of that because it's not configured properly today. And after we put the new drainage structures in below, the asphalt and the circulation will be designed much better. So you're not going to hear backup and all the other noise that goes along with it. And what they're going to build in the area of the dockings will help soften that as well. This leg of the building really is going to block any noise from the area where the trucks are going to be. And yes, Ken's has been a great neighbor. In fact, we've been asked to get involved in the beaver problem up there, even though it's not on our property. And Ken's has agreed to assist with that. The last time we did it, it was on our property, so we had the resources. And actually, Jack Bartolini stopped me on his way out and said, "It's getting worse, it's backing up and it's flooding." But yeah, we're going to take care of that. And we want to be a good neighbor. And I mean, there's one neighbor left here tonight. A couple of them had to leave already. And they expressed to me they have no concerns with this. We're going to live by the things that we said we were going to do at the zoning board level as well, which would be no truck traffic back here at all. Ultimately, we will come back at some point to redo the septic back there, but for right now, we're pumping it and it works for the number of employees that are there. But that'll be after the fact. We're currently before the Conservation Commission. We've had about a month's worth of meetings. Fuss & O'Neill is very aware of what's going on there. That's why I'm assuming when I quickly looked at that, a lot of the comments were similar to what we received a couple of weeks ago. We have had a conversation with them since. I'm hoping they deleted the ones that we explained away for them. And no? Okay. All right, it's going to take another phone call to sit and walk through it with them, I guess. But yeah, no, it's tracking in the right direction. And actually, we have EMC representative here today because, as you know, in this location is where the change in Route 9 is going to be, and they've got a very vested interest. We took into consideration when we were designing this to stay out of the way of what could be built in that area so it wouldn't impact it. And one thing we are doing, and we got approval from Conservation, and actually we just cleared it with DEP, I believe, is this trenching that's right next to the driveway. There's an old weir in there that evidently the system had never been maintained very well. And when Ken's got there, it's totally clogged. It doesn't work well at all. It trickles through. We have authority now to go in there and really build it the way it should be and reconstruct the weir and trench it out. So, in fact, I think we're going to sidewall it a little bit too, correct? Yeah. So it will enhance the drainage in this area dramatically, and but it's a pretty involved system, so I'll turn it over to Scott, okay?
Thank you, Bill. Again, for the record, my name is Scott Doty, principal with John G. Crow Associates. We're civil engineers, landscape architects. As Mr. Pizzoni pointed out, we're modifying a site that was built in the early 70s with late 60s style design and engineering. The crux of the work, or the majority of the work, involves the reconstruction of the trucking area that's to the west side of the building. I'm going to use your desk here, if I may, a little bit, Elizabeth. Thank you. This, let me orient you a bit. I guess Elizabeth's showing the same plan up in the screen. This is Route 9 on the east side of the plan here, the driveway off of Route 9. This is the west side of the building. And of course, this is the south side of the building. And currently there is a large field of truck activity, but it's really broken up into several areas by thin landscape islands and such, causing a lot of, as Bill had mentioned earlier, a lot of backing up, a lot of excess activity, truck activity, probably contributing to some of the concerns of the past from the neighborhood folks. So the idea here is to, with the automation of the warehouse, is to make the outside where the truck activity is for the drop-off of, by the way, there's no manufacturing here. It's not a raw materials in and a finished product out. It's all finished product in and finished product going out to be distributed. I just wanted to make that clear to answer your question, Mr. Chairman. To make that system work well, we're making this essentially one larger area. Of course, it's washboarded a bit so that we can collect at low points and treat the stormwater like it's never been treated before it's released to the drainage ditch that Bill had mentioned earlier that goes to the wetland. So the whole idea is to have a more open area for larger turning radii, so there's less backing up, eliminating three-point turns, allowing for stacking of idle vehicles, and also allowing for an efficient area for winter cell block warming for the diesel engines so they can start up nicely. But really what's coming out of this is a very significant improvement to water quality, stormwater from the site. Right now, this area has got some catch basins, as Attorney Pizzoni pointed out. They haven't been maintained very well in the last 40 years, 50 years. So we're proposing to install state-of-the-art, systems with deep sump, catch basins, hooded, water quality structures, and then detention underground in chambers. There's one here for the truck area. There's another here that's really just taking the roof water from the southwest area of the building here. Currently, it all goes untreated and with its silt to this drainage ditch, which as Bill pointed out, we recently did determine that we are going to have permission both from the Army Corps and DEP to clean that out. Basically, as a right, it's a 1970 drainage ditch, so we'll be able to clean that out. In the northeast corner of the building, This plan is oriented the same way. It's just the eastern edge of the building. This is the northeast corner. Again, Route 9 is to the right of this plan. And there's an existing paved parking field, which historically had been used for truck storage and some car parking. We're reducing the pavement in that area, creating a LID, low impact drainage collection system, a vegetated swale to a shallow basin, which has been sized for water quality treatment before stormwater, the first flush of stormwater before it's released to the wetlands. Right now, under current conditions, that area just sheet flows right into the wetland. So we're pulling, the matter of fact, the wetland edge comes right up to the edge of pavement. We're pulling it back 25 feet, in some places 60 feet, in order to accommodate that. As it's been pointed out, there's not a great demand for vehicular parking in the future for when Ken's Foods gets this automated system up and running here in this warehouse. The parking that we are proposing is 80 striped spaces. The zoning requires 229 parking spaces for a warehouse of this size. So that's a significant reduction in parking. So we are asking for the board to waive strict compliance with that, with the understanding that we do have plenty of paving in other areas of the site that if should it ever need to be striped, we can stripe it. But in Ken's Foods' tenure here, we don't ever imagine, after the investment they're making in automation in this, that they'll ever need it in any realistic lifetime of this facility. There is an overall reduction in impervious surfaces. The vehicular impervious surfaces, the roof, of course, is not changing. We're not increasing or reducing that. As Bill mentioned, we are in front of the Conservation Commission. We will be to the Board of Health at some point in the future. We're going to be doing the testing this spring and early summer for that. The septic system is further to the north across a drainage ditch which has become a wetland, another drainage ditch that was built in the 70s, and there is an upland hill here, but soils are marginal and may have contributed to the failure of that system, but it may have just been mechanical because it's a pump system.
Yeah, that's right behind the $250,000 wall we built to keep the noise down for the neighbors.
Another waiver, a set of waivers that have to do with regulations that we're looking for from the LID special permit are some of the more complicated ones that perhaps aren't merited on this project. That's the water balance calculation, simply for the fact that there's going to be a significant reduction in population at this site. There is no manufacturing, no processing here. And we are reducing impervious surface. It's inherent in that there's going to be less water use on this site and more positive contribution to protection of the water and wetland resources in the area. I have not really discussed how the site is surrounded by wetland resources and brooks, but I'm pretty sure that you're all probably very familiar with that and probably understand that's why we're in front of the Conservation Commission on this project. If you do want to hear more about that, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions in those regards. But I think you probably understand the Conservation Commission has generated a lot of discussion with us on those topics. The cuts and fills on the site are rather limited. There's under 10,000 cubic yards of soil that's being moved to and fro on the site, primarily most of it is really to excavate for the underground detention facility chambers that we're constructing. This one under the trucking area, and this one immediately south of the building in the lawn area that you're all probably familiar with when you drive by Route 9.
Can I comment there? That basin in the front was originally supposed to be an open basin. but Ken's wanted to make sure it was underground so that grass field would remain and would have a better visibility from the street. So they've gone that extra yard to keep that under control as well.
That's right. This is not, this is not the most inexpensive alternative for drainage that was available. But I think it's overall for the community and for Ken's, it's the preferable one. There would be some talk about if it was a pond, it would be an attractive nuisance for neighborhood kids and things like that. So it's not just the appearance, it's also perhaps the concern for safety, as we all remember in the past when there used to be soccer going on there. It's still, that lawn in of itself is attractive for kids. We are, again, as Bill pointed out, no new buildings. Stormwater management system, stormwater quality is going to be improved significantly here. Stormwater is going to be treated very close to the source. We have plenty of room for snow storage and allowing that to melt on pavements and go through that same system. We do have some non-structural, let's say, as the LID special permit would prefer, low-tech, low-cost stormwater treatment in that northeast piece. We did that partly because we don't have a lot of grade change to make up, but also we had fortunately we had the space that we were able to pull away and create that kind of swale in that shallow basin. The heat effect will be reduced from stormwater from the pavement. We're putting it in the ground, which will have a inherent cooling impact before stormwater is then released to the brook along Route 9. We do have a rather extensive native planting proposed in that low impact stormwater area to the northeast, adjacent to where we're removing the pavement, where we fully expect that it's going to be after probably a few short seasons will be integral with the wetland system there, or at least supportive and complementary to the immediately adjacent wetland. I believe that's all the major points that I think I would make. I know that there's a lot more detail in our package that you may lead to some questions I'd be happy to answer. And there may be something I forgot from the looks of Bill's body language.
I was just going to suggest that maybe you just walk them through the lighting a little bit. And
oh, thank you, Bill. Thank you.
It's going to show, and I think are we changing the rooftops units?
They're sharp cutoffs. Yeah, I'll describe them.
All right.
Yeah.
And one other point I'd like to make at this time, we did make some representations to the neighbors during the ZBA hearings that there would be no truck traffic in the back, that it would only be automobile traffic. That'll remain the same, other than for emergency access for the fire. And we've created a lane around the building for the fire department, so they're okay with that. And we won't be using any of the bays that are on the back side of the building. Those will be all closed off, and it'll only be in that right front quadrant, which will be the southwest corner. Yeah.
That's correct. And to just follow up on that a bit, we have made of course, we have met with the fire department early on in this process to make sure that they were okay with hydrant locations and making sure that they could go around the emergency drive around the building, or because there are going to be some gentle barriers at drives at this point here, all the way around the building, and also back in the northeast corner. We want to be able to turn around in that northeast parking lot, and we've accommodated that also. So the lighting is been designed at a 20-foot height. They're sharp cutoff luminaires. They're LEDs. The lights are going to be up within the box structures themselves. They're, as I'm sure you've seen many times, gone are the days of the actual definition shoebox-looking structures. These are much more streamlined, but they have the same characteristic, sharp cutoff. This area here, this square area here, is the west trucking area, the drive from Route 9, and then sort of another access drive around the south end of it. you may be able to see, or maybe better see on the screen, but the yellow area here shows where the lighting gets back down to zero from these proposed lightings. You can see it doesn't go off very far to the edge of the pavement, and it's nowhere near any of the residential lot lines that we abut. Also, there's some existing lights on the driveway there that will be retained. They're very much low level than these lights here. In the northeast corner, we're going to improve the lighting for that employee parking area also. That's this plan. And flip this over. Do not want to drop your microphone. I bought one of these before. So this is the northeast corner of the building. This is the building here, Route 9 again, to the right side of the sheet. The parking has been cut back 25 feet and 60 feet from the wetland. And again, you can see that we go to a zero light at the edge of the wetlands and on the edges, near the edges of the pavements. Again, 20-foot high mounting heights. Oh, it's much better. It's much better up on the screen. And you can see the large painted islands, which brings to mind landscape. We're not proposing any new pavement, and therefore we're not certain we're required, but we're requesting a waiver from landscaped islands within the parking areas based on the nature of the truck activity in the west area here, and plus in the west area. But in the northeast area, because we're removing so much pavement and we're creating so much landscape, and that combined with the existing vegetative buffer that's around the entire site, we believe that the existing vegetation plus what we're planting to the east of this parking lot is substantial and meets with the intent of the bylaw for visual buffering and creating natural systems that would be supportive of the wetland-related functions that are immediately adjacent to and surrounding the site, on the site. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Open it up to the board. Mr. Mills.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Was there, what were you saying about the roof line? That there was going to be?
No, I was just wondering what, because I don't remember what the rooftop units were going to be, or if we were changing them, because there are some rooftop units up there.
I have to say that I don't want to, Jim Bourne from Ken's Foods might know a little bit more about it. There are new rooftop units going to go on this building, and I know that I'm not particularly, because I'm the civil on the project, not particularly detailed in it, but I'm participating in meetings in which there's been some discussion and a lot of focused on making sure that noise is controlled to satisfy both state and local concerns. I don't know if you want to add to that, Jim.
No, I think you did it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah. The ones that are up there have probably been up there since 1970.
Okay.
They're being yanked,
So,
the existing.
the existing lighting?
No, I'm sorry, I'm talking about rooftop units, that's what I understood it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the HVAC.
The HVAC system, yeah.
Because they're putting somewhere between $20 and $30 million investment on the automation inside.
Okay.
It's got to,
Yeah.
they got to have the air and everything run
Their
properly.
insurance companies are basically requiring them to make sure that that works well, and should be doing what it is. But I did hear you mention lights. We do have lights that are with the same sharp cutoff luminaires are going to be attached to the building immediately along the truck dock, that west wall. If that's what you were going to ask, Mr. Mills, I think it was where you were headed. These are out in the field, heavily guarded with bollards, as you might imagine. Our 4 stanchions. Around the edge, also lights on poles, lights on the poles. But in this area where there's a great deal of, there are about 26 loading docks here that are going to be retained. I think we're sacrificing 2. I think there's 28 now. And, but there are these red dots, and you might be able to again see right behind you better. There's those lights there are mounted on the face of the building above the loading docks.
You know the type of light?
They're the same lights that are on the poles. They're LED. There's information cut. There's actually product cuts that are in your package, I believe.
I'm trying to get a question off that I know the chairman's going to ask. They're not wall packs, are they?
Wall packs in the historic sense, where when there's a couple people in the audience here that know how many years I've been doing this, that wall packs we used to put on that had an exposed lamp. Basically, they look like a shoebox, but half of it was actually the lens shooting almost directly horizontal. No, these are also sharp cut off. The light is only going to go downward and at a angle, I forget what the exact angle is, but it's going down, so it's not projecting horizontal.
Are they on the plan?
They are on the plan, and there's cuts in your package, and I'm going to try to locate those for you. I don't know if my package is set up the same way as yours.
At the very end.
Thank you, Karina. They're rather stylish these days. Maybe too stylish for a warehouse, I don't know. Probably right behind the plans. It might be your last pages in that, if you got the thin book. And there's also some bollard lights that I failed to mention that are between the employee parking and the doors that the employees go in. And I apologize if you don't have it, but I know I don't have it in mind. Yes, these are.
I think we're good.
You got the one package that doesn't have them, huh?
We're good.
Okay. Thank you.
No further questions.
Mr. Jenks?
I think I'm going to wait until they make the movie. Thank you for the detail in the package. I'm going to rely on that for most of my questions. I am interested, however, in, I think you said you were going to treat the roof runoff before it went into the ground?
If I did, I misspoke.
Well, no, I misheard.
Yep, I misspoke. No, we're not treating the roof runoff. That's why we have 2 systems. We've separated them.
Well, it's okay. I was merely interested in how you were going to treat it, how you were going to treat the water. Now I don't.
We're going to treat it with affection and kindly.
Thank you. Good approach. The water going into the drain out front headed toward Route 9, how's that water getting there?
Show them how it's like one system, really.
Yeah.
Right.
I always like it when Attorney Pizzoni says he doesn't know anything about engineering, but he knows as much, if not more, than I do. He knows what to.
They teach that in first year law.
Right.
Okay, I have a 20-minute answer and I got a 2-minute answer. I'll give you the 2-minute answer, and if that doesn't satisfy everything, then I'll go back and give you more detail. The stormwater in the truck area is captured in a trench drain at the loading docks or catch basins that are located throughout. And when I say it's washboarded, it has a low point, goes up a little bit, goes down just a little bit, have another low point up, and imagine a washboard. You're not old enough to remember washboards, are you?
Thank you. Controlling silt? Is that?
Yeah. And in those capture structures themselves have deep sumps, catch basins for the heavy artillery, and hooded. They're also hooded to capture any petroleum floatables truck activity here. So, and I'm gonna get, that's the belts, and I'm gonna get to the suspenders in a second. Those structures, those surface structures that are let's call the primary treatment, are then backed up by proprietary structures downstream of them before the underground storage area. We're going to use contact systems here, but for techniques, you're probably very familiar with them. The centrifuge is out. The finer sediments also have another capture for floating petroleums, and before the water goes into the underground structure. That's happening from both directions on the surface in this area going here. There's two structures. The stormwater from the roof, of course, as you pointed out, Mr. Jenks, that it does not need that same treatment. It's going directly into that capacity. These two areas are level, and they converge to a pipe where there's a control weir. There's a rectangular weir in that constructed in that manhole before it goes through another pipe to our reconstructed head wall, which discharges the stormwater to our reconstructed or maintained, our reclaimed drainage ditch that was built in the 1970s. We're going to clean that out. That's the drainage system and how we're going to, so this system, and whenever I say this, I take a look to Jim, because I know he's the facility guy, and he's the guy who's going to be ultimately responsible for it, is going to require a diligent maintenance O&M plan with regular reporting, regular inspections, and regular reporting, if not to this board, most definitely to the Conservation Commission in their responsibilities under the Wetland Protection Act and also the Stormwater Management Permit activity.
That was my next question, so I'll skip that. And it's all gravity drain, there's no pumping?
It's all gravity drain, and it's just making it. We don't have much. One of the things I haven't emphasized here, because I didn't know how much of an appetite there was at this board for it, but certainly have talked a lot at the commission. This site is severely handicapped when it comes to topographic change between the areas of pavement and the receiving wetland. All of these slopes are at a minimum slope for cleaning, self-cleaning. That's why this is why they're going to have to be reviewed and inspected on a regular basis. So not only the structures where the initial capture is, but also the downstream structures to make sure sediment's not filling up, so that we don't have to go to the extent that we are cleaning out this ditch. Or we certainly don't want to be cleaning out our underground facility here. That's why we have belts and suspenders before that underground facility there. So yes, they're all sloped. What's not sloped is the detention system itself. It is flat at the bottom, and it's the pipes feeding it are flat, and the pipes leaving it to the control structure are flat. As a matter of fact, they contribute to some of the storage here. All right.
Okay.
Then it slopes again to the head wall, from the control structure to the head wall.
Okay, different subject. You've got a line of loading docks and doors, and I thought I heard two contradictory things. One, that you were closing them out, I thought, and then more recently, I thought I heard you say you were maintaining them.
Well, I'm going to. I was going to wait till you were finished with your question, but
It's the north side which faces the abutters.
The neighbors, yeah.
Those are closed. We're
okay.
closing those, they've been closed. I don't think you've been using them. No, you've been using them one a little bit.
By
But they're all gonna
closed,
be
do you mean blocked off, or do you mean the doors are closed?
They won't be used.
It won't be used, probably closed initially, constructed.
You need a mic.
yep. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Jim Bourne. The doors will probably initially just be closed, and at some point we might, concrete them in, yeah.
Yeah, so it's always been even proposed to the neighbors and all the ZBA hearings that we would ultimately be using that corner where we are. because you've got the L shape of the building to block part of it, and then you got heavy treed areas as well, so.
I think you should ask to have a tour of this facility once it's done, and you'll see why they won't be able to use them. They're packing the product in here with this robotic system, and it's really filling the entire. The only area where there's going to be able to move to and fro by the robotics and the folks running the robotics is this front end here. It's going to be somewhat open.
Thank you.
Mr. Stein?
So, is there going to be any change with the turns at the entrance and egress of Route 9?
With Route 9, with its current configuration, no. It will be a right-in, right-out only. It'll continue to be, unless there is, the alternatives for the improvement at the Crystal Pond Road intersection, which play into this driveway, are ever come to fruition.
Could you just point on the larger site where the lighting is on that?
The site lighting, or the site lighting is what you're asking about?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm not answering the wrong question here.
Yeah, the parking, where you were going to have the 4 light poles.
Yep. Yep.
Just if you could point.
I'll keep it, I won't go to the lighting plan, because, yeah, that's all very technical with the photometrics, and I, quite frankly, have a hard time. They are about that far on this, at this scale. They're about here. Matter of fact, you can see them on your plan. It looks like a planet with 6 satellites around it. Those satellites are the bollards. There's one here. There's one here. There is another one here and another one here. So there's 2 there and 2 there that are in the middle of the field. And then if you look at your plan C-3.1, if you look around the perimeter, you'll see black dots, and 1 or 2 of them, actually on the layout plan 4.1, you'll see them labeled. It's probably the easiest way to look at it, Mr. Stein, is to look at drawing 4.1 in your package there, those reductions. And if you go around the perimeter of that west trucking area, you can see the lights there.
I've only been in town for 12 years, so I'm kind of one of the newer people. It doesn't look like there's any resident within any reasonable proximity.
Yeah. They might differ with you on that, but I think you're correct in that they are quite a distance away.
Like how far is the nearest resident?
Let me show you on an overall plan.
On the east and the west, at least a football field. Yeah. Behind it, probably 150 yards.
And, man, I'll take a drive over there.
125 feet.
So
you can see we do abut residences here. This is a hill behind the site to the north, where the septic system would be.
Oh, you need your microphone.
You need the mic.
Oh, thank you, sorry.
There's actually a rise in the topography in the back there, so it builds somewhat of a buffer.
Yep.
And we actually did do a berm, no, we didn't, but prior to us, there was a berm built back there for some of it. So it's pretty blocked. And I forget, what's the name of your street?
Orchard Road.
Oh, Orchard Road is the one.
Yeah,
that's
Orchard
directly
Road is
behind.
the one that comes in the back there.
So, could you just speak to the screening in terms of tree? I mean, I would assume that
Sure.
there's.
Sure. Over the years out here, there's been a number of screening. Initially, actually, with the project in the 70s, built a vegetated screen. You actually see it quite well on this photograph. And it shows up, you see that there's an evergreen screen there. And it's pretty clear from the 1970 plans that we looked at, that's when it was planted. And then the vegetation itself that's beyond that on some of the residences' properties. Then there's also the wall that was built a couple of years back that's running right along the north side of the paved area here on the building side of that knoll.
The soundproofing Mr. Pizzoni referred to earlier.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes, yeah.
And then on the east side of the site,
On the east side of the site,
Road over there.
on the east side of the site, there's the brook that runs up and of course continues on to the north, eventually goes to the Sudbury Reservoir. But all of this area is in natural vegetation between the brook and Deerfoot Road. There's also, Ken's Foods also owns this corner parcel, which is also heavily vegetated, almost all wetland. That's in that area there that's heavily vegetated and provides quite a screen. Along the south edge, along Route 9, is what I would call a relocated brook. The brook probably meandered at one point, even long before any, I guess, even long before Bill could remember, perhaps, since you grew up in the area. I know, I love you too. You can see how straight it is, but that in itself has a lot of vegetation in it, and that creates a barrier, somewhat visual barrier. But really, it's the distance there and the lawn. I think the people like the aesthetic of that lawn, as we mentioned before. The building is not, as far as a warehouse goes, it's not overbearing on Route 9. Coming from the west side, again, wetland and wetland vegetation, some upland islands amongst that, two brooks, two wetland systems coming together, and also between the property and the adjacent office building that's on Route 9, there also is the brook continues there, and it also has the mature vegetation.
So I
associated with
don't
it.
get the sense that we're losing anything in terms of screening or vegetation in this site plan.
That's what I was hoping that you would see.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Stein, if you look up in the top right-hand corner where the building is, there's an emergency access that comes out there on a Deerfoot. That's right where the veterinary building is, up on the hill. So you've got all that screening along Deerfoot.
That's gated.
And then back to the lights for a second, I think you said that goes to 0 within, well before
Yes.
even the vegetation.
On the I think it goes to 0 in the fringes of the vegetation that surround. Mm-hmm.
I guess my last question, which is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I guess it's a little too bad that we've advanced so much technologically that we're losing jobs in terms of the need for human beings to come to this facility to work. But I certainly understand it's a business, and this is the way of the future. And it sounded like in the event, for some reason, you might need to hire more human beings to put the robots' jobs at risks. You might need to add parking in the future. So I'm not particularly, I think you had said that there's sufficient paving to increase parking.
Yeah.
I don't know what the process.
We easily could get another 40 along the north side of the building, and another 40 along the westernmost edge of the pavement. And we also could stripe out some of that west parking or west trucking area if we had to, if some other user came in here.
So
I
it's
can't
kinda
imagine
late.
that. I could never imagine that with the investment that they're making.
It's a little bit late, so I don't feel like doing the math right this second. But the minimum in our code is
One space per 1,500 square feet.
would be,
It would basically math out to 229 spaces.
and you still have room for that.
We have room
That's
for
where I'm
that.
wrong.
Currently striped out at, I had the number here, I think it's 180 or 160. No, we're proposing 80. No, he doesn't want me to say, is that there are currently striping for 130 parking spaces on the site right now.
So is it safe to say that in the future?
And they're not being used.
That you could stripe
Well, not all of
the
them.
140, that you would, if necessary?
Yes. Yeah, if there was ever a need for it, we certainly could do it with the pavement that we have left.
Thanks a lot.
And as for the employees, what they're doing in the Marlboro location, they're adding employees all the time.
That's right. Some of the warehouse stuff is happening here instead.
I have a few questions. Maybe it's in the packet. When I went through it the first time, it may be there in another form. And I don't, if it's not, then I don't expect the answers tonight, but when you come back. There should be I don't know if, I'm sure you've calculated the square foot reduction in impervious area. Have you done that relative to a percent?
Yeah, relative to a percent, we are going down by 1/10 of a percent.
of impervious?
Yes.
You're reducing it by 1/10 of 1%.
Right, that's correct.
How about the percentage of groundwater recharge?
The information, you can see this from the soils, that the groundwater is high, soils are poor in the C, D categories. We're not trying to take any credit for recharge. The underground detention systems that we have proposed, they themselves, in order for us to accommodate the detention, are acting as underdrains in a high groundwater situation and creating the volume there, the vacancy there for stormwater when a storm arrives.
So you're not taking any credit for increase in groundwater recharge?
We're not, but we know it's going to happen. It's just that we can't guarantee it based on the fluctuation, and we can't be high enough above groundwater to guarantee that we'll have it during high groundwater season.
So based on that, then the flow rate from the site, there must be a calculated reduction in the flow rate.
Yes, there is. There is a reduction in the peak flows that shows up in the stormwater report, yes.
And then also, so if you're not taking any credit for the recharge, then the volume of flow would still be the same?
The volume is, there's an anomaly that was pointed out. Actually, the guys at Fuss and O'Neill noticed it, of course, after we did, using HydroCAD. For some reason, there's an anomaly that shows, and I'll explain why in a second, I'll get to it, that there's a very small, less than a 0.2% increase in volume. Has to do with, we believe, with the rounding up error, and I wouldn't call it an error, but the consolidation of rounding up within the series of calculations that HydroCAD does.
Okay.
So basically, it's at a zero increase in volume, but a reduction in peak rates of runoff. But we think with the, I know I'll be quiet in a second, is that with the, even though we're not taking advantage of infiltration, there will be some infiltration.
There has to be.
And so as a result, that the numbers will actually be lower than we show in our calculations.
Yeah, you're conservative.
Yes, thank you.
The back gate that goes out onto Deerfoot, that was one of the original requirements when the site was first developed back in the 70s, that would remain closed. And then when, it wasn't 9X, but it was the crew after that, they started having their trucks go in and out of that gate. They would be coming through the residential neighborhood and the school zone. So that original condition, I believe, was to have that gate closed at all times except for emergency. So we would want to make sure that that's refreshed in our work here. Why do you need 80? How many people are going to work here?
I think I might still be, even though Jim probably want me to answer, is that they have shifts. They have estimated their shift to be approximately 35 individuals. And so we wanted to make sure that we could accommodate an overlap between shifts. There might be some time when people in shift 1 are there and while shift 2 people are arriving. So we have the excess capacity for that. 22 of the parking spaces are on the west side of the building for truckers. There's a bullpen there, a locker room for them. Also along, which I failed to point out, it's right along the north edge of the west trucking area. 58 of them are in the northeast corner for the, I guess, the back office or the administrative and the folks running the information systems and counting, making sure everything's working right. So that's how we came up with a number to be approximately double what they needed for one shift.
There's places, sites all over town where the calculation would require more parking spaces, but the proponent comes in and says, I don't need them all, do I have to build them? And consistently, the planning board has said, no, you don't have to build them. As long as you've got the space, you can just make it grass. And if things change, you can pave it later without a big problem because you're entitled to them. So I put that out. If you don't need the 80 spaces and you want to reduce that number further, I would support that. And then you mentioned the field out in front. And it wasn't that long ago, because my kid played there. They had the fields, the soccer fields. Has that ever been discussed again with Ken's? It was way back when it was Western Electric, I think.
Yeah, it has, it's come up, but the liability that goes along with it is too extreme. And that's what happened, there was an incident out there, and that's why it stopped. You know?
Okay.
So, yeah, we don't want to entertain that. I wanted them to have the basin that was open so they could stock it with trout, and I could go over there and fish.
Is that still on the table?
No.
It's getting late, so I'll open it up to the public. Anyone from the public want to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, Bob Kamenetz, 10 Orchard Road. I abut the property directly to the north. And first I want to say that, just confirm what Mr. Pizzoni said, that Ken's has taken a lot of steps over the years to really reduce the noise, and there's been a significant reduction in the noise to the abutters, and it's really night and day as to what it was a few years ago. I did have just one question for the board, and there were a couple of conditions that Mr. Pizzoni referred to from the ZBA decisions, particularly closing the bays along the north side and restricting traffic on the road behind the facility to prohibit truck travel. And I have absolutely no doubt, based on our experience, that Ken's will do that. But there's also probably some value in preserving the record to show that. And I'm wondering if, do the conditions in the ZBA decision stand on their own, or should they become part of any planning board decision as well?
That's an interesting question. I'd have to look back at the conditions that the ZBA imposed when they granted the variance, which now you're saying you're not going to use.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't be imposed upon us unless we utilize the variances. So we'd have to move forward with them for those to stick here. But we don't have a problem with.
Well, some of them are for the 24/7. There was one, the closing of the bays was in the.
Oh, yeah, no, the ones related to the 24/7, when we went to 7 days a week, those will remain in place.
And even on the other one, if you sold the property, couldn't somebody still work off that variance to?
Variances will be gone in probably a year and a half.
Okay. But I think the ones in the 24/7 pretty much were the ones we're talking about, which is
Yeah,
closing the
and-
bays
and
and
we
restricting traffic.
implemented those closed, we agreed that we would close the bays in the back, we'd move to the west corner for all activity, we'd have only employee parking in the back, and it would remain emergency access only. out
Right,
there.
and like I said, I have no doubt, based on our experience with you guys, that you intend to do that. People move on, time passes, and I'm just wondering if it makes sense to preserve that in the planning board's decision as well, in addition to the zoning board's decision.
I just asked the town planner to look at that ZBA decision and capture those
Okay.
items that would still pertain. And we'll go over those with Attorney Pizzoni. And you're welcome to call or come in and see the town planner and make sure that your concerns are addressed.
Great, thanks, and thanks to Ken's, because they have been a pretty good neighbor, so, thank you.
If there's nothing else, we'll continue the hearing.
Okay.
Be able to have an opportunity to look at Fussin' O'Neill's comments, allow you to comment back on them. Our next meeting is on the 15th, May 15th.
Okay. You want to start at 4:30?
Yeah, right. So, Mr. Mills,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we continue the public hearing for modification of the defined subdivision plan, Stony Brook Village, 15 Oregon Road, to May 15th at 8:15 p.m. and continue the public hearing for the modification and approval of major site plans, Stony Brook Village, 15 Oregon Road, to May 15th at 8:20 p.m.
Second?
Okay, hold on.
Oh, sorry. It's Ken
The
Foods, right?
Oregon Road thing threw me off.
I jumped ahead, sorry.
First part of the motion was right, but the address was, it should be changed to.
325 Turnpike Road. Oh, I read this one.
Yeah, I know, yeah. You skipped
So
that.
let me start over. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we extend the public hearing for the lower impact development Ken's Food, Inc., 325 Turnpike Road, to be continued to May 15th, 2017 at 7:40 PM.
Second.
All these two?
That's Stonebrook.
Wait a second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Just one last question.
7:40?
Ken's Foods, 7:35 and 7:40.
Okay.
Will Ken's be having a new beaver-flavored salad dressing?
Maybe.
Technicality?
I did expect to see you.
I didn't read that.
He thought he would wear it. It was a little chilly today.
Hold on, we have one more
Yeah.
motion.
Mr. Chairman, I also make a motion that we extend the public hearing for a major site plan for Ken's Food, 325 Turnpike Road, for May 15th at 7:35 PM.
So
Second.
The earlier motion was for the lower impact development. This one was for the site plan approval. Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor? 4-0. We'll see you at 7:35 on May 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to point out the staff has been great on this. It's been really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is vote to release escrow bonds for William Caleri Lane. Well, I know the town planner's been doing a lot of work on this one. Karina. As recently as today.
Yes. Hold on a second. The planning department was approached by Mr. Chuck Black regarding Reservoir View Estates, also under Kendall Homes, and William Caleri Lane was the original subdivision name, it still is, requesting that funds that he had given to the town for definitive subdivision review, leftover bonding funds from the original bond that had been reduced, and a couple of other fees, which I have outlined here. Hold on. Let's see where I put it. Oh, it's right here. Okay. So, there's $4,000 in the, approximately $4,000 plus interest for Fuss and O'Neill peer review. There's $5,500 held back from the original bond plus interest. There was $200 held for 2 boundary markers that were to be installed for a total of $9,700 plus interest. So there's $9,806.64 for those under William Caleri Lane account. Then there is an additional amount of $4,571.51 that was put into account in 2008 for Reservoir View Estates. I'm not 100. I have the breakdown from the accountant of what it relates to, and then an additional $1,048.12 from 2010 under Kendall Homes Inc. account. So in essence, it's approximately $9,806 plus $4,571 plus $1,048. I went to the site to check to make sure that the 2 boundary markers were installed. There's a railroad spike in his driveway, which is number 4, William Caleri Lane. I believe that was Lot 2 of the original subdivision, because they didn't want to put a marker right in the driveway. They used a big old railroad spike. And then across the street between houses 1 and 3, there's a utility box. About 6 feet behind that is an additional, what appeared to be a concrete bound.
It's a granite wall.
It is granite, okay. That one was pretty flush to the ground. They said they had difficulty putting that in, but they got it in. There were a couple of items from the open space area that there were 6 markers outlining that area, and they were out there, little green and white signs attached to trees. Then there was also a small triangular section at the back of what is now number 7, which was then Lot 4. I want to say it was maybe 25 by 25 along the corner, and there's a wood stake at the corner, and they had been mowing that accidentally, encroaching on the open space, and they were required to put 3 blueberry bushes, which are there. They're with green leaves on them. And then there's also, what do they call it, leaf litter that they put back. So I spoke with Chuck Black today, who helped me locate some of these features on the phone because he was out of town, and to confirm with me that those were all set, and they were. And I have pictures that I'll put into the planning directory for future record. So it's my opinion that all those conditions have been met to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we release the rest of the escrow bond for William Cleary Lane.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, hold on.
William Cleary Lane bond was only one of, was it 3? Are you going to do the others separately, or?
And Reservoir View Estates and Kendall Homes. Release all 3.
Second.
Good catch.
Motion's been made and revised and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor? 4-0. Very good. Covered a lot of time. Those covered quite a few years of bonding. Other items on the agenda, the planners report. See, we have 4 items here. Karina.
Okay, very briefly, the deed research committee that was established in one of the past recent planning board meetings met on April 20th. And we confirmed that on the June 5th, 2017 planning board meeting that Mass Autobahn will present from 7 to 8. So they have their head person coming in that time slot, so hopefully we can.
Sorry, Karina, can you just repeat that date, please?
Sure. On the planning board agenda for June 5th, Mass Autobahn will be presenting, scheduled for 7 p.m.
Thanks.
Okay, and the next item is Metro West Regional Collaborative is scheduled to hold its full board meeting here, hosted by Southborough, on May 25th from 8 to 10 a.m. That's headed by Karen Adelman, who's a coordinator for them. They asked if we were interested in, through Vanessa Hale and Carol downstairs, and Elizabeth and we got it set to here at the McAuliffe Hearing Room on May 25th in the morning, if anyone's interested in attending. There'll be coffee, but no food.
Mr. Selectman Shea and myself attended the last one last month, and it was in Wellesley. And at that time, they asked us, because we take turns, the towns take turns, and they thought that it should be our turn, so we agreed.
Voluntold?
Yeah.
Let's see, and the last item, I guess, for today is some recent conservation permits from an email from Conservation Agent Beth Rosenblum on April 5th. Stormwater permit for construction of single-family home at 14 Barn Lane. Order conditions for reconstruction of Main Street, Route 30 between Sears Road and Park Street. Order conditions for replacement of a septic system at 14 Pine Hill Road. Then on through April 20th, 7 Gilmore Road, negative determination of applicability for septic installation. 168 Middle Road, negative determination of applicability for attached garage addition and driveway drainage improvements. 2A Fiddleneck Lane, certificate of compliance for house construction. And lastly, 2A Azare Drive, order of conditions for house construction and wetland mitigation and restoration at 74 Oak Hill Road. Just so that you have that in your back of your mind. And that's it for the planner's report.
Mr. Chairman, can I just raise a question at this point? Briefly. I have a conflict. I will not be able to attend the SHOPC meeting tomorrow morning. Karina, would it be possible to bring up the question that one of the residents had tonight about the senior
The 55
housing
plus.
inventory? And maybe, in the context of that, and have like a DHCD inventory update at a planning board meeting in the not-too-distant future, if possible, please.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay.
Including the affordable numbers. I think that we were still waiting for an update from DHCD as to what the expected time frame was to accept the revised numbers that you had submitted.
Well, we did discuss that at one of the prior hearings where they had indicated that the numbers that we have stand as long as we can support them.
Okay.
And I felt very sure that we could, but I was going to reconfirm when some of the Park Central affordable units, if there was a time frame when those were no longer able to be counted. So I was going to check on that. That was the last step.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Anything else? We have one more item on the agenda. Approval of minutes from April.
We sure, or is it the 3rd?
The agenda says the 4th, and the minutes say the 3rd, so when did we meet?
On the 3rd.
All right, so the minutes are right.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from April 3rd as written.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Bill's good, I'm good.
While we're waiting, we can show the people at home the level of interest at this point of the night by the public.
Not gonna make any money on concessions tonight.
Can I just recommend one change on line 30? Mr. Morris reiterated that the goal is passage of Articles 31 and 32. Banning recreational marijuana in the town, in the general code and the zoning code.
I like it.
I missed that, Jesse. Did you make a change?
Yes. On line 30 on page 1.
Yeah.
Mr. Morris reiterated that the goal is passage of Articles 31 and 32, banning recreational marijuana through the general town code as well as the zoning code.
So you're adding the words "and 32."
Yes, and referencing the fact that 32 is for the zoning.
Any other,
No, that's great.
anyone else? Motion's been made and seconded
With amendments.
with an amendment. All in favor? 4-0. Just one other item, if you happen to go by the Planning Department office, you'll see more improvements. It's more conducive to the public coming in and having a little bit more room. It's a lot more room for Elizabeth, and through teamwork here in the town hall, we've picked up some storage space across the hall. It's really top-notch. Appreciate that. And I guess more improvements to come. It's great. Thank you. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to recognize everyone on the planning department who also did an excellent job at town meeting, presenting the board the articles and our position. So, Mr. Stein, I know Ms. Latrell's not here tonight, but she was up there as well, and yourself in front of the mic, sir. So. And with that, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? We're adjourned.